Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao-Ming of Revolution. Epstein files got the world on fire. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform. Y'all, this Jeffrey Epstein thing is getting real dark. Epstein seemed like he ruled the world. Let's get into the content. Salute. I mean, he seems like he ruled the world.
A newly released cache of Jeffrey Epstein documents is detonating across social media, reopening old wounds and dragging new names and even 20th century history into the scandal's expanding orbit. Among the most jarring claims is a purported email exchange alleging that Adolf Hitler, during his destitute years in Vienna, lived in a shelter financed by three wealthy families: the Rothschilds, the Epsteins, and the Gutmans. An assertion now...
The Rothschilds, the Epsteins, and the Gutmans. The Epsteins, now it's starting to make more sense. They keep telling us, where did Jeffrey Epstein get his wealth from? How did he become so wealthy? Then they would tell us, well, he was blackmailing. This is way more than just him blackmailing people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk. BS. This clown got real dark, small hat money. Going back to the days of Hitler, his family had money. That's what they didn't want nobody. It's all coming out now. His family had money and they funded Hitler. His family, people talking about Epstein say he worked for the Rothschilds. That's all smoke and mirror. He is a Rothschild-ist type of family inheritance type of guy. That's why he has so much money. They want to just believe, oh, he was just coming up with money. He has trust fund type billions, bro. He has that type of paper. And it's just some crazy, it's darker and deeper than that too. But it seemed like this. I'm telling you, that's why every ruler in the world except Putin said he worked for the small hats. All the rest of them was kneeling at his feet, from the kings, the sheiks, everybody was kneeling at his feet. And RIP to Saif al-Islam, Muammar Gaddafi's son, who was gunned down and killed last night. Saif al-Islam was killed last night. Saif al-Islam was soon to be the president of Libya, returning to the days of Muammar Gaddafi. Do not forget what just came out in the small, up in the Epstein files. This clown told them to attack Libya, and he wanted to steal. Epstein personally wanted to steal the wealth of Libya. They just released that yesterday. Now Muammar Gaddafi's son, who knew everything, was murdered last night.
Now being fiercely debated online. The email, allegedly involving Ariane de Rothschild, claims Hitler survived by selling his clothes and artwork while staying in a shelter funded by Jewish financiers, naming the Epstein, Rothschild, and Gutman families, and referencing the Epstein's banking presence in Vienna and Palais Epstein. The correspondence is...
You see, hidden funds, hidden wealth. Also, we're going to learn that this man here, another thing, the media got to tell the truth. This man didn't like black people around him. He didn't like black people, period. That's just a fact. You're nothing to him. But neither were white people. White people were nothing to him but peasants. Nothing. He didn't even like them. And that big scandal, that's the reason they abused all the white girls, because there wasn't Jewish white girls. So in the Torah, they're just animals. And to these sick people, and that's why that's not a sin in their religion to do that to Goyim. It's not, you're not even wrong in their religion and their way of thinking to do that. That's why this is a big, they don't feel like Epstein did anything wrong. Those weren't Jewish women and stuff getting abused. Those weren't Jewish women, kids getting cannibalized. This man was a real satanic devil.
Part of a massive U.S. Department of Justice release under President Donald Trump, spanning millions of pages of
Who knows if Epstein is dead? That's who Epstein probably not motherfucking dead. He got too much power to even for them to even risk him dying. Why? Because if he would have genuinely died, then the files could have been released to people that they couldn't intercept them. It could have been a bunch of shit went on that was unattended consequences. The only way to keep things and the sexual assault, that's the minor things that was going on. The big things was when they talking about the cannibalizing of children. The big things is when they talking about the adrenochrome that allegedly these Hollywood people, allegedly these rich billionaire people were extracting from these children to stay young. Don't let this shit slip by you.
Documents, images, and communications tied to Epstein's network after his Florida sex crime conviction.
That's that's a lot, but that's the small potatoes to what these people were doing. Jay-Z going down, he tied to this shit. Beyonce, that's not a game. That's true. That's not a game. Jay did some disgusting shit to get to the top. All y'all was right. Fuck no, he's no financial wizard. Fuck no, Jay-Z was no better at making business deals than Master P. Jay-Z did what P and them didn't do. Participating in some very disgusting shit that they said, okay, we're going to make him the financial wizard. That's going to lead the rest of these clowns like P. Diddy and them right to the slaughter.
Officials say the material illustrates the scale of Epstein's access without establishing criminal wrongdoing by everyone mentioned. The files also describe a 2017 exchange in which Bill Gates is said to have discussed pandemic simulations with Epstein, framed as preparedness exercises and now resurfacing as a pre-COVID data point. Elon Musk is referenced separately, acknowledging limited contact while saying he repeatedly declined invitations to Epstein's island. One of the darker threads focuses on Ghislaine Maxwell's father, media tycoon Robert Maxwell. The documents allege he once demanded hundreds of millions of pounds from Mossad and portray him as a powerful figure with access to Western and Soviet leadership before his death in 1991 officially ruled an accidental drowning. Other records outline a post-Gaddafi effort to recover frozen Libyan state assets worth tens of billions of dollars and reference figures, including Emmanuel Macron, Vladimir Putin, and Volodymyr Zelensky, underscoring the global reach of Epstein's contacts. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna says only a portion of the Epstein files have been released so far, but argues what is already public is enough to raise serious questions about transparency, influence, and proximity to power.
So more of the Epstein files have dropped, and before anyone's even read them all properly, the British media have already decided what the real story is here. It's Russia, it's Putin, it's Moscow, intelligence intrigue, straight in, no pause. The cost of that, it's straight away, because once that framing clicks into place, you're not weighing evidence anymore, are you? You're being guided away from it instead. The confidence you're hearing isn't built on proof, it's built on swapping things out. Actual known links out. Israel, those alleged Mossad ties and that kind of thing. Thin claims get shoved to the front. Awkward ones get ignored. Before you know it, counting how many times a certain word crops up in the files ends up passing for analysis, while the evidence and the actual proximity and those real ties, they get buried. That's what's just given way here, though. It's not a story, not a theory. The sorting mechanism itself passing itself off as mainstream journalism. And once you clock how that confidence is being put together, you don't switch it off again, because this isn't confined to Epstein. It's not about Russia at all, not really. And it won't be confined to this release either.
Let me begin tonight with something that I think is even more important, even more extraordinary: growing suspicions of a Russian connection. Epstein had apparently limitless supplies of money. Where did it come from? He procured many young Russian girls. Why was that so easy for him? The files released show more than 1,000 documents which referred to Vladimir Putin, and 9,000 referring to Moscow. The FBI says that he was Putin's wealth manager. Epstein filed all of his messages. He filmed and taped powerful Western leaders in deeply compromising situations. Why? Doesn't it make you wonder at least about the possibility of a KGB operation big enough to ensnare former presidents and prime ministers and the leaders of some of the world's most powerful companies? I know, this all sounds impossibly sensational, conspiratorial, a James Bond villain plot in real life. But there is so much smoke billowing out of one of the most extraordinary establishment crises in my lifetime that it is well worth exploring whether there might be also a genuinely ominous backstory.
Right, so another tranche of Epstein files has come out. Non-Q, the British media has decided it's Russia. That's the problem behind Epstein. It's always Russia. No analysis required. You just say the words. You look a bit grave, you spout some inanity, and then you move on. Very efficient way of sounding informed while avoiding the documents or anything like evidence entirely. Andrew Marr went on air as the poster boy for this, and he started counting words. Putin appears 1,000 times. Moscow appears 9,000 times. Therefore, Russia must be the story then. That's not an investigation, is it? That's substitution. It replaces judgment with arithmetic and pretends that repetition equals relevance. So by that logic, London would be running the operation then, because London appears nearly 30,000 times in the Epstein files, which nobody seriously claims, of course. And the fact that nobody follows that logic through tells you it's not logic at all. It's a way of sounding empirical while avoiding direction. The Russia claim itself rests on one anonymous FBI source alleging Epstein acted as a wealth manager for Vladimir Putin. The entire Putin story comes from one anonymous FBI source. The same source, in fact, who says Epstein also happened to be former Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe's wealth manager as well. Now, Mugabe was under US sanctions. The FBI doesn't need imagination to know whether someone is running money for a sanctioned head of state. It's literally their job. There's no evidence Epstein did that, no investigations, no paper trail, nothing, which means the source is either wrong or they're guessing. And even if the FBI knew the Mugabe claim didn't stack up, then treating the Putin claim from the same source as solid, that's not caution, is it? That would be stupidity. And there's plenty to attack Putin over, of course, isn't there? But making stuff up, be that by claiming fact or by insinuation, undermines all of that as well.
Put into this nonsense.
The same document release that gets turned into a Russia ghost story is packed with repeated routine references to Israel-linked figures and places. Former Israeli PM Ehud Barak staying at Epstein's New York apartment years after Epstein's conviction. Ongoing contact with Israeli political figures. Tel Aviv appears 1,200 times in the files. Benjamin Netanyahu's referenced 650 times. None of that's framed as intrigue, because intrigue would require someone to ask why a convicted sex offender retained normal, unbroken access to senior Israeli political circles long after he was supposed to be anathema to everyone. Instead, it's treated just like background noise, as if it doesn't matter, because that doesn't demand answers, does it? Russia, however, well, they get the thriller treatment, don't they? Israel gets filed under admin. The media aren't weighing two explanations. They're elevating the weaker claim in the file and demoting the strongest, most consistent pattern. Ongoing access, continuity, protection, those ties to Israel, potentially to Mossad as well, because one is an ally and the other one isn't. Evidence isn't guiding emphasis here. Emphasis is being used to decide what counts as evidence. And once you do that, you don't get to call it caution, because it's just avoidance. The plea deal sits in the background like a landmine everyone's stepping around as well. Epstein avoids serious consequences in 2008 through a deal prosecutors later admitted was quite extraordinary. It's not disputed. It doesn't require intelligence theory to be explosive in and of itself. It requires only one honest question. How does that happen without protection? And that question points upwards into institutions and networks, doesn't it, that are perhaps very close to home. And that's precisely why it's not pursued with the same appetite as a foreign intrigue narrative that carries no domestic cost, because bashing Russia is always ripe for conquest, isn't it? Instead, the audience is offered atmosphere. Russian girls are mentioned as if trafficking only counts when it can be nationalized. The fact that Epstein trafficked girls from multiple countries over many years is flattened into a stereotype that carries implication but without the explanation. It's easier to gesture at a foreign bogeyman than to sit with the mechanics of abuse being tolerated by more familiar systems. It's not a mistake. Nobody slipped up. This is just how they move when something gets a little bit tricky, a little bit awkward. When the Epstein files start pointing towards Israel, the ally, the friend, the country you're not supposed to upset, the attention gets shoved somewhere safer. And Russia does that job nicely because Russia is already the villain. You can blame Russia all day and all night. Nobody important gets a phone call. And that's why the counting routine matters. They start saying Putin appears 1,000 times, like they've cracked some sort of a code, when all they've done is hit Control and F and stop with the results felt comfortable. Because if you keep going, you hit Israel nearly 5,000 times, Netanyahu hundreds of times, Tel Aviv over 1,000, Mossad's named more than 100 times. And suddenly that counting trip stops being fun because those numbers don't point at an enemy, they point at a supposed friend. So the weak story gets inflated because it sounds exciting and safe, and the strong pattern gets flattened because it sounds awkward and expensive. Cover must be provided for Israel. Russia provides that nicely. Russia gets the spooky tone. Israel gets the pass. That's the move. That's what the media is doing here. Once you're seeing it happen, once you acknowledge it, you don't need inside knowledge or secret documents to prove it. You can see that sorting happening in real time, which is why when Andrew Marr goes on LBC and starts spouting this drivel, people have readily called it out. You can see who it's acceptable to suspect and who it's impolite to question. And from that point on, the authority isn't gone because you know the truth. It's gone because you know how the filtering now works. From that point on, every claim has to stand alone because you're that much more switched on now, aren't you? Institutional trust no longer carries it forward. The media can't say, we've looked at the evidence without inviting the obvious follow-up, which is which evidence and why that set of evidence and not that other set of evidence. The files themselves did not force this outcome. The media's own response has done that. They could have treated all lines of inquiry with equal procedural seriousness. That's proper journalism. They could have caveated where necessary. They could have allowed weight to accumulate over time. They chose instead to front-load a speculative frame involving Russia that felt familiar and safe, and that choice now binds them. The attempt to bury Israel-linked questions by avoidance has done the opposite because they've been asked regardless. Avoidance is legible. When something is handled with visible delicacy while weaker claims are handled with bravado, people see it. They sit up and take notice. They don't need to believe any particular theory to register discomfort with that. They need to watch how the story is being handled and ask, well, why haven't you talked about this, that, or the other then? Because surely that counts too. Especially if you've been following this Epstein business for some years now. But this is the mainstream media performance that we've become so used to, isn't it? Counting words is now proof. Treating one anonymous source as a narrative anchor, pretending that global abuse networks can be explained through national caricature. It's not sophistication, it's procedural cowardice, all dressed up as rigor, and it's clumsy enough to be spotted a mile off. Now, the media has also misjudged their own audience. They assumed people would not go to the Department of Justice site themselves, look up stuff for themselves. We do this more these days. Would not trace the claims back to the origin. It's all fully searchable, actually. It would not compare emphasis with material. Welcome to the world of independent media, though, because, of course, we all do that, don't we? We can smell your bullshit, and it stinks, and all of us are capable of doing the same. Primary sources are just a click away. When people check them, the gap between what is being said by the mainstream and what is actually there in black and white becomes rather obvious, as does the deception that's involved in that. And once that happens, the whole trust us model that the mainstream media relies on very much stops working, and deservedly so, because trust has become transactional, claim by claim, and institutions that were built to mediate complexity find themselves treated as just another interested, perhaps biased party. It's not because audiences are reckless, it's because they've been given reason to be skeptical. And that's good. We should be more scrutinizing of the media. This episode also fixes future constraints. So having led with Russia, yet again, it becomes harder to pivot to institutional failure without admitting a misjudgment. Having minimized Israel-linked proximity, which Epstein was already known for, it becomes harder to later insist it mattered all along. The exits for the media narrow, and what remains is a frozen frame that can't be advanced honestly without reopening the decision that created it. And that narrowing matters because it turns journalism into risk management. Questions are not pursued based on evidential strength, but on consequence. Some directions are safe to explore. Others are treated as a bit hot to handle without wearing some gloves. But once that boundaries becomes visible, claims of neutrality just stop functioning. And that's how credibility erodes in practice. It doesn't happen through dramatic betrayals, but through repeated small choices that prioritize comfort over confrontation. Each choice might seem defensible on its own, but together they form a pattern that audiences can recognize without having to articulate it. Recognition's enough. Epstein sharpens this because the underlying crime is concrete. It involves abuse that persisted for years with institutional tolerance. When the media appears more comfortable speculating about foreign intrigue than interrogating how that tolerance actually operated, the dissonance becomes unbearable. People don't demand perfect answers, but they do demand proportional seriousness, and we're not getting it, and we know when we're not getting it. The refusal to apply that seriousness evenly also hands ground to independent media by default. And that's not because they're flawless, but it's because they're willing to sit with the discomfort longer. They're willing to challenge it. When mainstream outlets retreat into familiar frames, others will fill the vacuum, fill that void that they've left. And that shift's driven by process failure, actual journalism. It's not ideology. Process failure and a failure for due diligence. Very hard to repair when you say you're all about the facts. The files have therefore become something of a reference point now, not so much for what they prove, but for how power responds when proof threatens to travel in unwelcome directions. And that reference point will shape expectations long after this story fades, because people will look for the same move next time, the same kind of substitution, the same safe villain being scapegoated to protect an ally. At that stage, even honest reporting will struggle because it arrives in an environment primed for suspicion. The cost of early deflection is long-term distrust. That cost is paid by the institution, not the individual presenter who moves on to the next slot. Nothing forced the media into this. There's no legal gag. There's no evidentiary compulsion. There's no public demand. They chose the path of least resistance. And that choice now limits their room to maneuver. So every future appeal to responsibility has to contend with a record that shows how selectively they've applied that responsibility in the past. There's a record that's now baked in, and that carries consequences whether they like it or not. And the first of those consequences is that future corrections will stop repairing damage and start compounding it. When a broadcaster later adds caveats or softens the Russia framing, it won't read as intellectual honesty. It'll read as a retreat. Retreat does not restore authority. It advertises that the initial decision should never have been made, but instead of apologizing for making a mistake, this is what they do instead. Second consequence is that the sorting mechanism is now the story. Audiences no longer listen only to what is said, they listen for what is avoided too. They notice which questions get framed as legitimate and which are wrapped up in procedural language that functions as a warning label. Once that habit sets in, it becomes the filter through which everything else gets heard. That is why this can't be dismissed as a one-off misjudgment. It exposes how editorial risk is managed when evidence points somewhere uncomfortable. The instinct is not to test harder, but to redirect attention to a safer adversary that absorbs suspicion without threatening relationships that matter. That instinct is not illegal, but it is institutional, and now it is very, very clear and obvious to us. The effect on accountability that has is immediate, because when the media demonstrate that proximity to power will determine what tone they take, the public stops accepting their tone as a proxy for seriousness. They will start looking at the process instead. They'll look at who gets caveated, who gets amplified, who gets ignored, who gets treated as a curiosity rather than a problem. And those comparisons don't require specialist knowledge. They simply require us to pay attention. And the long-term effect is that claims of responsibility lose force. You can't ask the public to trust your judgment when they have watched you substitute judgment for safety, for cowardice, arguably. You can't insist on caution while deploying speculation selectively. You can't claim neutrality once your boundaries become visible. The attempt to contain the Epstein story by steering it towards Russia has therefore done the one thing it was meant to avoid. It's made the avoidance itself the bit that's obvious. It's turned the handling of the story into evidence, and it's fixed a condition that now carries forward into every future scandal they'll cover, where power, protection, and proximity all intersect. And that condition is a very simple one. When evidence threatens to travel upwards, the media instinct is to send it sideways. Now that this has been seen in real time, blatantly so, horrendously so, unforgivably so, it can't be unseen. Every future insistence on balance, on responsibility or restraint will all be weighed against this episode, not on its merits, but as part of a pattern that's already declared itself. The Epstein files did not need to prove an intelligence operation to achieve this. They did not need to resolve anything. They only needed to trigger a response, and the response did the rest. The media chose the safest frame available, and in doing so, they burned something they can't get back and frankly don't deserve to. So support your favorite independent media outlets if you can. Of course, it isn't just the media getting rinsed over Epstein, but the government too, as Keir Starmer is in a whole world of trouble, even if Peter Mandelson has formally quit. So get more on that story right here. Please do also hit like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content.
What was really going on with Epstein? Because Epstein was more than just a serial pedophile and a pervert. He was an incredibly powerful man who was, by the way, in multiple instances in the files that were just released, talking about his work for Mossad, talking about his work for the Rothschilds. I mean, it just goes on and on. And so can we discuss the blackmail operation that was taking place and which government that's a special ally of the United States put him up to it? And do we really want to be allies with a country that kidnaps young girls for rape just so they can have dirt on American politicians and control our foreign policy? Spoiler alert, the topic was changed promptly to Epstein's relationship with Russia, and we did not talk about the blackmail operation. But we will be talking about it here on this show. But before we do, Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, so as you're about to see, Israel is all over this files. But when we give you the information about what they wrote when they thought no one was looking, we'll then talk about 2 other things. One is, why is the entire national media covering it up when there's abundant evidence? At the very minimum, there should be a national conversation. Who did it, right? And then we could also talk about if it turns out to be Israel, are there going to be any consequences? And that begins to give you a sense of why no one's talking about how it might be Israel, especially given what Drop Site News reported. And so don't forget that either. We'll add that to the end of the story.
Yeah, in fact, let me just briefly mention, we've been covering the insanely good reporting that Drop Site News has been doing in regard to Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with Israel, because it wasn't just a blackmail operation. He was also brokering international deals on behalf of Israel, right? Whether it was selling, spy software, cybersecurity software, creating ties between Israel and the UAE. We've talked about all of it, so there's that. But this notion of a blackmail operation, let's talk about that a little bit. So look, we know without a shadow of a doubt at this point that Jeffrey Epstein was in fact working for Mossad. Was he an agent himself or was he an asset? To me, it doesn't matter, because it's clear in these documents, based on emails that he himself was writing, that he was working for Mossad and the Rothschild, by the way. He even says it clearly in one of the email exchanges. So included in the latest batch of the Epstein files is an FBI document that quotes a confidential human source who claimed that Epstein was an agent of the Mossad. Now, this CHS, confidential human source, was connected with Epstein through Epstein's lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, which we'll be talking about in a little bit as well. Now, I'm gonna give you the excerpt from the actual FBI file, and I'll read you the relevant parts. So, confidential human source, CHS, learned that Dershowitz influenced many students from wealthy families. For example, Josh Kushner and Jared Kushner were both his students. Dershowitz told CHS that if he were young again, he would be holding a stun gun as an Israeli intelligence Mossad agent. Confidential human source believed Dershowitz was co-opted by Mossad and subscribed to their mission. CHS still continues to communicate occasionally for Dershowitz. Now, even more damning was the next excerpt I'm gonna read you from the FBI document that was part of the Epstein files. Let's take a look. Jeffrey Epstein was represented by Dershowitz. The confidential human source remembered Dershowitz tell Alex Acosta, the US attorney of Southern District of Florida at the time, that Epstein belonged to both US and allied intelligence services, meaning Mossad. CHS shared phone calls between Dershowitz and Epstein during which he/she took notes. After these calls, Mossad would then call Dershowitz to debrief. Epstein was close to the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, and trained as a spy under him. And the confidential human source also told the FBI, let's take a look at the next graphic, another excerpt from the FBI document. Trump has been compromised by Israel, and Kushner is the real brains behind his organization and presidency. Now, before I give you more, I kind of want to stay on the topic of Dershowitz and what we've just read, right? Let's process it for a moment. I'll start with you, Cenk.
Yeah, so Dershowitz, in all of his appearances, says, I'll sue anyone that talks about me or any client of Jeffrey Epstein. And he constantly demands to know the names of the victims. He keeps saying, no, the one thing that you should redact the people who might have done it, but you shouldn't redact the names of the victims because he wants to sue them. So that's lawfare. And so he's threatened people over and over again. He threatens every show that talks about it. And he has a mysterious amount of money, I don't know from where, to apparently engage in all these lawsuits.
He sure does.
And so now this is a confidential human source. That means it is one person, and you take it with a grain of salt. And I would love to get all of this into a court of law. And I would love for all this evidence to come forward and for us to adjudicate this. Now, for the moment being, we don't have that. Why? Because Dershowitz and Epstein and everyone who covers up for them in the US government has prevented that from happening. There are no clients, the Trump team told us. Biden didn't do anything. He just drooled for 4 straight years. And every administration, there's nothing to see here, but 1,200 girls have been raped. But no one raped them other than Epstein and Maxwell. So now we have the stories of Dershowitz. Again, we're not saying they're true. We're telling you this is what's in the files reported by a confidential human source. Another where he watches Epstein.
What?
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Because I actually read verbatim what the Epstein files say about Dershowitz during my appearance on Piers Morgan's show today. And I had a question for both Eric Bolling, who was on the panel, and Piers Morgan about Dershowitz and whether or not they're interested in talking with him on their shows in the future. So without further ado, let's take a look at how that exchange went down. Anyone who mentions Dershowitz's relationship with Epstein, as I have done in the past, gets threatened by Dershowitz with a lawsuit. And I never retract my statements because I would love nothing more than to go through that discovery process. But in the files that were just released, there's an email that Norm Finkelstein sent out, essentially condemning Dershowitz because Jane Doe number 3 said this in sworn testimony. Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz was around Epstein frequently. Dershowitz was so comfortable with the sex that was going on that he would even come and chat with Epstein while I was giving oral sex to Epstein. So my question to everyone who has Dershowitz on as if he's some sort of expert who should be taken seriously, who has an opinion that should be valued in any way, will you please stop having that disgusting man on your show?
No,
I agree.
Anna, I won't. And no, hold on, guys. Hold on. I had him.
Piers Morgan never answered the question, but Eric Bolling, I mean, he couldn't wait to say, no, I'm definitely going to keep having Dershowitz. I hold his feet to the fire. Okay.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell? Why am I paying so much to Verizon and company, man? Right? No. Protect the government, protect the deep state, protect beloved Israel. Fascinating, Eric. By the way, look, we're going to give you more about these details. Back to the drop site news stories about how Epstein tried to procure cyber weapons for Israel. Aren't we done? Like, that's it. Like, is there someone who is not connected to a government and their intelligence agencies that tries to get cyber weapons for that government? Is that a thing that happens? Oh, I was a civilian. I was walking by a pizza shop and decided, look, there's people who I could buy cyber weapons from and give them to Israel. That's not a thing. So all of establishment media still ignoring this is insanity. Total insanity.
Jake.
And so look, one last thing about that, Anna. Imagine if the story was Epstein tried to procure cyber weapons for China. Do you think we'd be talking about that nonstop? Of course, everybody would be like, China, our mortal enemy, China has cyber weapons for Russia, Russia, or just a random country, Kenya. Like I imagine New York Times, CNN would be like, whoa, Kenya is all over the Epstein files. And it turns out he was trying to get cyber weapons for Kenya. He was trying to get America to bomb Kenya's neighbors on behalf of Kenya. Wow, what an amazing story. When it's Israel,
no, there is a pattern when it comes to Israel, and we just need to call it like we see it because it's the truth, okay? Israel provides safe harbor for Jewish Americans who happen to be pedophiles and they want to skirt prosecution. So Israel, bring them in, come on, we will provide safe harbor. Israeli government officials come to our country attempting to rape our girls and our government lets them go. Tom Alexandrovich, whatever happened to that guy? Right, by the way, I looked into it just to see if there are any updates. The latest update on Tom Alexandrovich, who was caught in an FBI sting attempting to have sex with a 15-year-old girl, who was a decoy, by the way. Last time he was written about in US media was November of last year.
So they won't extradite him. We're not even asking them to extradite Alexandrovich. 8 Americans got caught with him in a sting. They are facing full consequences, which they should.
They should, absolutely.
Right, but Alexandrovich, because he's Israeli, faces no consequences. So, by the way, as I talked about on Tucker Carlson's show that came out on Friday, Israel has also murdered 9 Americans in the last 3 years. No accountability, 0. One of them was an American journalist, one of the most prominent journalists in the Middle East. When the Saudis did it, we still talk about it today, and we should. What a monstrous act it was to murder Jamal Khashoggi. Meanwhile, Shireen Abu Akleh, an American journalist, murdered, and everyone acknowledges it was an assassination from hundreds of yards away, a sniper shot to kill her, and our government doesn't even care. Doesn't even ask for justice. Doesn't ask for an extradition. Who did it? They don't care because they work for Israel. And we're tired of soft pedaling it. No, Israel's totally above the law in America. This proves it over and over and over again. So let's give you more from the files.
So Ghislaine Maxwell was also accused of being a Mossad spy in this document dump, okay? And I mean, look, that should be the least surprising thing on the planet, given the fact that her father, Robert Maxwell, worked for Mossad. So in an email contained in the files, gentleman by the name of Mark V. Iverson, who had apparently had some contact with Ghislaine Maxwell, was told that she was an Israeli spy. Quote, I was warned that she was a spy and to stay away from her, he said in one of the documents. Now, in the same email, by the way, and these are emails. So this is him writing what he has been warned about and what he knows about Ghislaine Maxwell. So let's take a look at this excerpt from his email where he writes, and this is the relevant part, I suspect Robert, Ghislaine, and Jeffrey were all Mossad agents trying to blackmail leaders in the political and financial world. I mean, how much more do we need, honestly? Okay, how much more do we need? I'll give you more if you want it.
No, we're gonna give more, but I talk to folks that largely consume legacy media today. So if you're online, especially if you watch Young Turks or some of the other shows that are revealing these things, or you're on X, you largely know a lot of these things. For people who are consuming legacy media, watching cable news, reading New York Times, etc., they have no idea who Ghislaine Maxwell's dad is, and that he was a legendary Israeli spy, that he stole Americans' nuclear secrets. Now, these are acknowledged facts, but if you tell people who watch television, they think you're a conspiracy theorist. They're like, oh, that sounds crazy. Ghislaine Maxwell, a potential spy for Israel. Her dad was their top spy ever? Oh, come on. You must be an anti-Semite. That's what legacy media told me. No, it's right here in the files. We didn't write the files. And they're saying, there's, again, over and over references to they worked for Mossad, they constantly helping Israel. So you could say, hey, they're all anecdotes and I can't connect dots if my life depended on it. And then you could work for the New York Times then.
So also found was a December 2018 email exchange between former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Jeffrey Epstein. So in it, this was really interesting. Let's take a look at this graphic. So Barak asks Epstein if he's going to be in London on Thursday, and Epstein says no, and quote, you should make clear that I don't work for Mossad, with a smiley face. He included a smiley face on that. And then Barak later responded with, first he's like, wait, me or you? Like, should I say that I don't work for Mossad or you don't work for Mossad? And then Epstein responds with me. And then Barak responds with like a winky emoji, like basically like, yeah, I'll tell them you don't work for Mossad. Finally,
it's just absurd. And look, here's what gives lie to legacy media, saying, well, I mean, it's not perfectly verified, so we're not gonna report on it at all.
No, it's verified.
But wait a minute. They found one reference to Russia that was instantly in the papers.
I know.
Russia! Wait, I thought you said you weren't gonna publish anything because it wasn't verified. When it's about Russia, you immediately publish it. When you have 200 references to Israel, not verified. Sure. Whatever gets you through the night, man. So everyone who works at the New York Times and everyone who works at CNN obviously works for Israel. And there's not one journalist in the whole group, not one in all of national media. You can't see all this. You didn't read the drop site news stories. You didn't see where Epstein says in his emails, I would like America to bomb Syria on behalf of Israel. I would like America to bomb Iran on behalf of Israel. No, you saw it and you buried it because you don't cover the news, you cover up the news. Keep going, Anna.
Final thing I'll mention, and to me, this isn't the smoking gun that people are kind of treating it as, but I'm curious what you think, Cenk. It has to do with ISIS, right? So ISIS is an offshoot of Al Qaeda. We are now very friendly with Al Qaeda, apparently, because a former Al Qaeda leader is now the leader of Syria, and the US. More importantly, Israel wanted the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. They wanted someone friendlier to Israel in place. Now, in an email exchange between Jeffrey Epstein and Tom Pritzker, something really interesting comes up because Jeffrey Epstein talks about what the US allowed ISIS to do in Syria. So let's get to it. He says, Turkey gives Nusra, al-Nusra, which is, by the way, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, a heads up on Iraqi recruits, slaughter. Russia gives Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, a heads up on coup. US gives a pass on ISIS to Palmyra, which is an ancient city in Syria. So that's the relevant part. Why? Why would the US give a pass to ISIS? I thought we wanted to defeat and beat ISIS. Why hasn't ISIS ever attempted to attack Israel? Not that I want them to, but isn't that kind of interesting?
It is weird how they have attacked all of the Arab states, and the most Muslim fundamentalist terrorist group in the world thinks Israel's A-okay and never attacks them.
Weird.
Things that make you go, So look, is ISIS engineered by Israel? I don't know. This is
I would bet money on it, but we don't have the smoking gun.
So what we're sharing with you is the information we do know. These are in the files. Have they been confirmed? But the problem is, guys, when you go to confirm it, who's gonna confirm it? The CIA? The same people, it says US, not Israel in that case, US gives a pass on ISIS. So what are we gonna go to the CIA who gave them a pass the first? Hey, are you guys working with ISIS? And we're gonna get an honest answer? Are we gonna get an honest answer from a Republican administration or a Democratic administration? Now, we know the answer definitively, no. We will never get an honest answer for them. So as journalists, your job is to dig in, right? Follow the money, follow the clues, connect the dots. But our national media goes, no, under no circumstances will we do that if it implicates the CIA or Mossad. Never. We are going to be lapdogs for them. And on top of that, up until now, so we'll see how they react now that this batch of Epstein files have been released. So far, still zip it, no, never mention Israel. But in the past, they would go an extra mile. If anyone mentioned Israel, then the New York Times would get riled up and CNN, all right, let's go find some way to character assassinate that person. Someone on the right said it, someone on the left said it. Let's call them an anti-Semite. Let's try to ruin their lives because we're journalists. No, you're not. No, you're not. None of these people are journalists. So we have no journalists in the national media, not one talking about Israel. Not one has the courage to mention the dozens and dozens and dozens of times Israel is mentioned, okay? And we don't have anyone in government we can trust. And they don't understand that the rage is going to build. You think you're just gonna do that to the American people And they're just gonna be like, oh, sure, yes, mainstream media, yes, US government, yes, CIA. Do whatever you like, sir. Rape our daughters, take their kids, do whatever you want. Of course, Israel is above the law. Of course, we're so sorry. You think America bows like that?
We've been bowing.
Well, we're gonna find out. Our politicians aren't America. Our politicians are scum of the earth. They're the worst of us. And our stupid lying media telling us they're the best of us, that they're honorable, they're having debates. No, they're cashing checks and selling us out. On the Democrat, so the Republicans, you deal with your own house, and thank God for Tom Massey. On the Democratic side, we got one guy, Ro Khanna, calling all this stuff out. He's the one that worked to get these files released. By the way, everyone on the Democratic side, Ro Khanna almost single-handedly got these files released on the Democratic side, working with Massey on the right wing. I mean, he's the only one that's functioning in Congress. What is everyone else doing? What are all the Democrats doing? I'll tell you what Chuck Schumer did over the weekend.
That's what they're doing.
What are they doing?
Smelling their own farts. That's what they're doing.
They're just useless. And I mean just about every Democrat outside of Ro Khanna. And so, you know what they did this weekend? The leader of the Democrats in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, he gave a speech about how we have to give more money to Israel. He gave a speech about, I will get Israel every dollar that it needs, beloved Israel. Who was he giving the speech to? Donors who are gonna give him more money and who are gonna bribe more congressmen. But as they give money to 94% of Congress, not one reporter in corporate media can figure out, gee, I wonder what's happening in Congress. Oh, they're only giving to 94%. You're not allowed to mention that fact. You should all be humiliated and you should all retire immediately if you're pretending to be a journalist in establishment media. None of you are journalists, not one of you. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true.
Through all of this, what are you seeing that is further confirmation of this Israel, Epstein, Mossad, CIA cabal connection here?
Yeah, so as we talked about last time, Dropset's been doing this ongoing series of investigations on the connection between Epstein and the Israeli government and Israeli security services and Israeli private firms tied to the security services, which are very heavily involved in the tech sector and tech surveillance and so forth. Epstein was a very critical node in all of that. Now, this email dump is very interesting because there was a tremendous number of documents dumped. And in typical fashion, they weren't dumped in a way which made them extremely accessible. They kind of were released in a very chaotic fashion. And my understanding is about 3 million documents were released, but that document release is only about half of what the DOJ is said to have. So there should be another 3 million or so files and documents related to Epstein that the DOJ has in its possession. And I think Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey and a few others have brought that up. So, whatever we've seen right now, and I saw you guys were reading some of the really egregious sort of allegations that were in some of these emails and correspondence in some of them, that's still maybe just the tip of the iceberg, to be honest, because whatever they saw fit to release this and not the other 3 million, which we don't have any schedule or time frame to see. So, I'll tell you that our previous stories were based on the very, very limited Epstein file releases that had happened beforehand, but also some involuntary releases that took place because some hackers online had hacked former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and hacked one of Epstein's old inboxes for a certain time period. And then we were able to see this very voluminous and far-reaching relationship that Epstein evidently had with not just Barak, but a wide range of figures and institutions in the Israeli political and security establishment. He was a very critical node in all of that. And, I've said this many times. People ask me, was Epstein a Mossad agent per se? I think that in reality, his stature and the role he played was in many ways far above that. If you look at his conversations with Barak, who at this time was one of the most influential people in the Israeli political and security establishment, he'd been the prime minister, he was the defense minister during part of their conversations. He was really looking up to Epstein. He was looking up to Epstein for help. He was trying to get his attention. The power dynamic was quite discernible in their interactions. So it was really, Epstein was kind of above any institution like that per se, but he was a resource and a critical node that they actually relied on for connections and help and for money and political purposes and to spread their influence globally and so forth. So I suspect that these files, which, again, we haven't had the chance to go through in great granularity and really to extract the true meaning out of them, does take some time to kind of put them chronologically together and see what the meaning of all the conversations were in context. But I do suspect that they will point more of this. Now, I have been looking at that conversation that you referenced earlier with Barak and a third figure who, we have some theories of who it is, but we'll not share them yet. But I think someone people probably know very well. I do think that points to even more detail about what Epstein was doing. And I think the one thing about these documents is that they're going to help us do a lot more stories about this Israel connection soon, because they filled in the gaps from some of the things that we weren't able to nail down before. And I think we'll see a lot more stories about Epstein's influence through Israel in many countries around the world, including in many countries in Africa, Central Asia, and obviously in Europe and North America and Russia as well.
And what do you make of him sort of filling in Eliud Barak about it? Why does he need to know this? If if Palantir is going to do what they're going to do, he needs him to know about Peter Thiel. Like, why bring this guy who is legacy leadership in on this if they're just going to, why? What do you, I'm asking you to guess.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because at this time, Ehud Barak was leaving public service. And in Israel, and like many countries, when politicians leave public service, they want to try to leverage the access they got in office to make a lot of money. And in making a lot of money, often still pursue the same political goals that they did in office, or whatever ideological goals they had, but try to make money as a private citizen in tandem with that. So what Epstein was doing for Barak at this time was he's helping build him up as this tech security mogul. And as you can tell, Barak didn't even know what Palantir was at that time, so he probably didn't really have that much of a background in the field. He was someone who's focused. He was a defense minister and so forth. He was a professional soldier at one point in his life and politician.
Well, also, to be fair, right, most people didn't know what Palantir was at that point. And they had really just kind of secured their CIA funding at that point, which, you know what I mean? So most people didn't know about it. And here he is speaking about it as if he has some sort of CIA insider knowledge, passing this on to Ehud Barak.
Yeah, it's very notable for that reason. You're right. And one thing that I've seen in these email archives and some of the other leaked archives that have come out over the past year or so, and has been reported by a few other places, smaller outlets as well too, is that Palantir, sometime around this period, was attempting to hire the Israeli ambassador to the UN directly out of his role at the UN, Ron Prosor. So, there was some very intimate relationship between the Israeli political establishment, security establishment with this company, which, as you mentioned, also has ties to the American intelligence establishment. So Epstein's interest in it is not surprising to me in a way, because he was very invested and interested in this idea of surveillance technology. And he was a very intelligent and forward-thinking man in some ways, in the sense that he was plugged into all these networks and he was trying to shape the technological environment that we would see in the years to come through his access to intelligence resources and also the money he could draw upon.
Well, don't you hate when people say, "I told you so"? Yeah, that's me, actually, because I did tell you, sorry, but I told you the gold and you bought some. If you didn't, trust me, it's not too late. Experts that have called and haven't purchased yet.
No way. No way. No fucking way. This is the way the Jew. This is from Jeffrey Epstein.
It's time to sacrifice Cheeser.
No, bro. This is not me saying it. It's not Nick Fuentes saying it. It's not Sneeko. It's not Hassan.
I don't know what else you need to see for proof that Jeffrey Epstein worked for Israel and was clearly a Jewish supremacist. Shout out to Osmongold.
It's Jeffrey Epstein saying it. This is the way the Jew make money.
It sounds anti-Semitic, but it's literally coming from Jeffrey Epstein. Selling short the shipping futures. Let the goyim deal in the real world. Let the goy work while we selling short the shipping futures. They basically make money from finance while the goyim do all the heavy lifting.
And made a fortune in the past 10 years selling short the shipping futures. Let the goyim deal in the real world.
Goy lives matter. GLM. Osmongold's GLM.
Fucking God.
GLM. Yeah, right? It's worse.
Just every stereotype confirmed overnight.
But look, his chat is saying Ye was right. But if Hitler says it, it's a problem. Sneeko was right.
Holy fuck. Play the music?
He had that ready?
Play the music.
No way.
Too much. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. I might get in trouble for that. Yeah, but trust me, if there was no TOS, I'd be playing it, okay? Like, just keep that in mind.
It's not TOS. It's just a song. It's just a song.
Too many rules. Not all in one day.
Osmongold!
See if I can find some more of these, too. The Epstein emails includes numerous derogatory messages towards Goyim. Oh, here we go. Here's even more of it. Let's see it. This is the way they... Oh, here we go. Goyim were born to only serve us, he said in a 2010 sermon. Without that, they have no place in the world, only to serve the people of Israel.
Checkmate. Checkmate. What else do you need? At this point, what else? What other information? Oh, that's like a conspiracy theory. Matt Walsh, did you read this? Goyim were only born to serve us. Without that, they have no place in the world, only to serve the people of Israel. What else do you need?
Guys, this is insane. Really. Really, like, I mean, this is like every stereotype, every paranoia, every conspiracy theory, everything. Just it all aligns.
Even though Yi saying he is against the Jew.
I don't even know what to say. Wow. Conspiracy people always right. How is Nick going to react?
Yeah, every conspiracy theory from that I've said for the past 4 years has all ended up true. It's like, you're not a conspiracy theorist. You're just early.
Can't wait to find it. See? Oh, man. Stop being asymmetric. Listen.
How is it anti-Semitic to read what Epstein was saying? Like, how is it? That's how much we have to dance around cancel culture, which really is just protecting people like Epstein. Censorship is really just protecting Epstein. But you're just reading what he's saying, and you have to be like, "Is this allowed?"
Jews are not a collective. Like, I joke about this, right? But like, it's still fucking ridiculous. It is. Obviously, we're joking around. If people take,
he's like, okay, wait, no. No, shout out to Osmongold. But I want to talk to him about the fact that it's not left and right. I know JD Vance is retweeting him and stuff, but the left-right psyop. That is just another control mechanism. Look who's really in charge and who's really at the top, where our money's going and what they think of you. Goy. Look at what they say about you. This is who's really in charge. This who is behind everything. I've been saying it. And it's time now, looking at the Epstein files, to not get distracted by petty things because what really differentiates the left and the right, the main thing, it really comes down to transgenderism. It's just yelling about transgenderism. And how important is that on a grand scale? I agree with Clavicular. It's just another person, a mod.
Seriously, that's on them. This is nuts. It is. And you have to admit, I mean, anybody, if you're looking at this stuff, you've got to fucking admit, this is crazy, guys. This really is crazy. What are we doing here?
Every time you pick up these newly released Epstein files, you realize that the convicted sex offender often seemed to know something before the world did. And this time, that trail led us to Libya. The same Libya that NATO intervened in the middle of a civil war and ousted President Muammar Gaddafi. What did Jeffrey Epstein know about Libya even before the Libyans did? I'm Ananya Datta. Let's get started. Libya's downfall in 2011 is often framed as an Arab Spring uprising. But beneath the language of popular revolt sat a far more deliberate Western push for regime change. As protests broke out against Muammar Gaddafi's 42-year-old
Alice Long got killed this last night is because he knew that that Jeffrey Epstein wanted that money from Libya.
Rule, the Americans, British, and French moved quickly to take control of the narrative. Claims that Gaddafi was preparing for mass slaughter in Benghazi became the trigger, and NATO took this as a green light for an aerial war. Then on 20th of October 2011, disturbing images of a blood-stained and shaken Gaddafi started circulating. He was being pulled out from a gutter in his hometown, only to be dragged, beaten, and finally killed. In the video, filmed by a bystander and later aired on television around the world, Gaddafi was seen in the last chaotic moments of his controversial life. But hold on. 4 months before Gaddafi's death, while Libya was still officially at war, Jeffrey Epstein, an American financier in New York, was already discussing how to make money after the country collapsed. All the emails you see hereafter have been officially released by the US Justice Department as part of the Epstein investigation. These were sent to or from jevacation@gmail.com, which has been established as Epstein's official email ID. The emails show that Epstein was constantly in talks throughout 2011 with multiple people, some named like Gregory Brown and Jess Staley, others unknown. They spoke about Libya's political chaos, frozen assets, and the opportunities that the chaos created. According to the email, about $80 billion in Libyan funds were believed to be frozen internationally, including roughly $32.4 billion in the United States. One email laid out the plan very bluntly, and I'm quoting from it. So if we can identify or recover 5% to 10% of these monies and receive 10% to 25% as compensation, we are talking about billions of dollars. Another email notes that France had already begun transferring frozen Libyan money to the rebels' National Transitional Council, officially for humanitarian aid. But the sender adds a crucial line here, and I'm quoting again. It is estimated that the real number is somewhere between 3 to 4 times this number in sovereign, stolen, and misappropriated assets. The sender also said that he knows some former members of Britain's Foreign Intelligence Service, MI6, and Israel's external intelligence agency, Mossad, and they can assist in efforts to identify and recover quote-unquote stolen assets of Libya. Now, this series of mails suggests that the plan was to start the groundwork before Libya officially fell, which they somehow knew was going to fall. The sender calls this the quote-unquote the real carrot, one that can help Epstein's company to be ahead of the queue in rebuilding of the country. There is also an email extensively speaking about Mahmoud Jibril. He was the interim prime minister of Libya during the time Gaddafi was overthrown. In this email, the sender, as we know him, Greg, claims that he was aware of Jibril's resignation a month before it actually happened. Taken together, these emails paint a disturbing picture. While Libya was being bombed, divided, and dismantled, powerful men in New York were already calculating percentages, their fees, and future contracts. Jeffrey Epstein's files force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. They're no longer just about sex crimes, flight logs, or who attended what party. The names stretch from tech titans, Wall Street deal makers, to foreign dignitaries, royalty, former presidents, and even sitting leaders. And these people, whether convicts themselves or not, made Epstein's influence boundless. So much so that he was present that day on the Libyan streets where Gaddafi took his last breath, not in uniform or the camera, but as a shadow that knew what was to come. I'm Ananya Datta. Thanks for watching.
Website. See this is a photo of John Bonet on the Boulder Police Department website. See the jumper? This is a photo of Jeffrey in 1997, 1 year after John Bonet's body was found. See that he has gray hair? This is an actual Epstein file that you can find on the government website. The number's on the screen. See the jumper? Do you see the blonde hair on the little girl? Do you see that Jeffrey has gray hair? This is a comment I got on Instagram on a post on the same topic. I'll give you a second to read it. This is the very next Epstein file after the Epstein file I just showed you. And the file number for this one is on the screen as well. Who is she? Who is that little girl? Release the damn files. This is an actual Epstein file. The file number is on the screen. I'll also put it in the comments. This is an actual photo of Jeffrey Epstein with a little girl on his shoulders. You can see in the photo, she has blonde hair, and obviously her face is redacted. Then someone sent me this. I don't know. But I think it does have a striking resemblance to this young girl. I think it has a striking resemblance to this young girl. And if you look at Jeffrey's age in that photo, he's younger. It's probably taken somewhere in the 90s. I'm just saying.
For anyone who's not actually sifting through the Epstein files themselves, I don't think you understand what an oppressive fucking task this is. I don't think you understand how mind-melting it is, because every time you see something and you go through a rabbit hole, you realize there's another thing and another thing and another thing. And the reach of these people, there is nothing that they did not touch, okay? I'm going to give you an example in a second, the thing that's right behind me. But like, this was the first thing I clicked on. I didn't know how I was going to start going through all of these fucking millions of things that were released. So I literally picked something at random. I just picked a fucking file at random. And I found this, cream cheese baby, okay? And before I get into it, when I say their hands were in everything, There's a random email from a guy to Jeffrey Epstein, and he ends it with Saints will win. The date, February, whatever the fuck. It was when the Saints won the Super Bowl. Fixed. Does it necessarily mean it was? Yes, okay, because this, all right, this is like, this unlocked something for me for some reason. Anyway, cream cheese baby, okay? I'll explain. This, you're never going to convince me why the fuck this person's identity is redacted, but it's redacted. On July 16th, 2009, 3:31 p.m., this person's obviously responding to something, but I don't see the rest of the chain. LOL, obviously responding to something. I don't know if cream cheese and baby are on the same level. It's okay. There is still enough time today. I'm trying to schedule priming for 5:30. Fuel explosion 9:45 p.m. ? Will bring a new engine startup video. Then the rest of this chain, Epstein says, there's millions of babies, very little good vegetable cream cheese. That fucking gives me the heebie-jeebies. By the way, I haven't even processed that statement. He has so much access to babies that the real delicacy is a good fucking vegetable cream cheese. Fuck this. Fuck everything, okay? Then they go on about where they can find a good vegetable cream. Jeffrey finds some at 2J's, okay? Just in case you were worried about it. But this is what I'm concerned about. Felt like a non sequitur. Fuel explosion. I'm like, let me just Google July 16th, 2009 fuel explosion. There's no way, right? There's no way that on July 16th, 2009, there was a fucking fuel explosion just after 8 p.m., just outside Detroit. The 9 Mile Bridge had to get rebuilt. Officials say a tanker truck carrying thousands of gallons of fuel was traveling on I-75 when it apparently collided with a car. The crash and resulting inferno collapsed the 9 Mile Road overpass as drivers watched in horror. The explosion in Detroit was similar to an explosion that happened in Flint more than 6 years ago. Wonder if they had anything to do with this one too, or that one too. So I'm like, did they plan a fuel tanker explosion? He scheduled it for around 9:45 p.m., ? But just after 8's pretty close too. No other fuel explosions come up for that day. When I Google, I got to page 10 of Google and there were no other specifically fuel explosions that day. So then I go to the files and I search for Detroit. Over 1,000 hits. I searched for Michigan, over 1,000 hits. And it's not just Epstein, it was Maxwell as well. And there's an email where she's talking about her sponsors in Michigan and where she's going to be staying in Michigan. And suddenly there's all this business happening, all these flights to Detroit, constantly flights to Detroit. And then there's an incorporation that happens the incorporation, I just remember it saying something like, for the purpose of buying distressed properties. Okay. Was this explosion a leverage for some business dealings? Because they started to go to fucking Michigan a lot. And if you Google whether Epstein had any business dealings in Michigan, you don't see anything. There's nothing there. But every other fucking day, one of his assistants is sending a calendar invite about planning a trip to Detroit, booking the flights to Detroit, going from Nevada straight to Detroit. He's emailing with other people talking about, all right, and then I'll meet you in Detroit. And it was all after this fucking fuel explosion. Then there's that footage from that Bannon interview, the interview of him that Bannon is doing that was released with the Epstein files. And he's talking about market manipulation. Then there's that email where he talks about how he does market manipulation. That's what we do. You see in this context that Saints will win email sounds a lot like, I'm just giving you the inside scoop in case you want to put some money down on it. And then you find out that he and Maxwell met with the 4chan guy, and then that same day, the /poll page thread, sub, whatever the fuck you call it, started. That's where Pizzagate was born. And Maxwell was some kind of super duper moderator on there and on Reddit. What do moderators do? And I think it was called Maxwell McGraw or something like that. Wasn't her dad's textbook company called McGraw-Hill? Anyway, the last entry, the last activity from that person was the day that she was incarcerated. So the Pizzagate thing was active disinformation, because it's actually what they were doing. Because why don't you search for pizza in the Epstein files? You mean radiating a soft glow with the look of bliss and excitement? Yeah, that's the pizza. And that's in response to someone saying she looks pregnant. I wanted to let you know the crew really appreciated the pizza today. Thank you for letting us do that. Do what? Let's say 4 p.m. It shouldn't take long, maybe a couple of hours for the casting. Then I will make the pizza mold after. I'll have it ready when you come back. Since we're not going for crazy detail, you can just wear either skin-tight nylons or just a thong if you want, or nothing. It's entirely up to you. But I think this one is mostly going to be about contours. Casting with ASS in capitals. This person's obviously doing some kind of plaster mold, and they're doing the ass first and then the pizza mold. You can wear skin-tight nylons, a thong, or nothing. What else are we talking about? Holy shit, Chunky, I forgot about that. What time do you want to get pizza and grape soda tomorrow? I wonder what grape soda is in reference to. We know what pizza is in reference to. Subject line, spoof on chandelier, the video I sent you with the amazing little girl dance. Totally loved it. Pizza party was great. We had a lot of fun, stayed late. We all slept in yesterday morning. Your night was good? I always felt that little girl in the chandelier video, it was very creepy, wearing the nude colored, it was very fucking creepy. Dancing with a grown man. That's exactly what it was made for. We weren't reading into it. We didn't have dirty minds. That's exactly what it was fucking made for. Send pizza to Bobby. And that's an alert. That's a calendar alert. Thank you for the pizza today. Really good. Your pizza is yummy, yummy. Remember Justin Bieber's song? Yummy, with all the pictures of babies. And everyone was like, he's telling us something. And everyone was like, you're reading too much into it. No pizza for breakfast and go do your homework. May I bring in your slice of pizza to you? Respectfully, Daphne. Your slice of pizza or a slice of pizza. If you're talking about food, we know what they're talking about now, right? And then I'm just going to end it with this. Can I bring a little baby back for you? Or two, boys or girls? So Madonna. This woman, Peggy Siegel, was heading to Nairobi. Can I bring back a little baby for you? Or two? There's so much more. I have 20 seconds left. I'll make another video. There's just so much more. And that little Todd Blanche fucking statement, I think corroborates Sasha Riley. It corroborates the story. What do you mean? What do you mean that you didn't release any videos that depict death? Huh?
Let's go for pizza and grape soda again. No one else can understand. Here's something that keeps coming up. And remember the Pizzagate? Remember how they talked about pizza?
Yeah. What
Well,
about it?
Here it is. It shows up in the Epstein files. I wanted to let you know The crew really appreciated the pizza today. This is from a guy named Roy Hodges to Jeffrey Epstein. I wanted to let you know the crew really appreciated the pizza today. Thank you for letting us do that.
Oh, Roy and Stephanie. That's nice.
Thanks for letting us do that? You mean eat pizza? Of course, that's not what that means. Pizza is obviously a code word for something.
Oh, I wonder what it could be.
Here's another one. This is, we don't know who it's from, but it's to jeevacation@gmail. So I'm going to guess maybe that's Jeffrey Epstein's vacation email. It says, this is better than Ilhan and Chinese cookies. See attached. Let's go for pizza and grape soda again. No one else can understand.
This is better than a Chinese cookie? Oh, to say Ilhan means then better than a Chinese cookie.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is better than a Chinese cookie. That's what that's supposed to say, but it says Ilhan. This is better than a Chinese cookie. Let's go for pizza and grape soda again. No one else can understand. So, of course, they had to make anybody who saw pizza who caught on to this, they had to make them out to be crazy. Just like they made you out to be crazy if you questioned the vaccine during COVID. Just like they made you out to be crazy if you thought there were Nazis in Ukraine. Just like they made you out to be crazy if you questioned the Russiagate conspiracy theory pushed forward by the FBI, CIA, the Clinton campaign, and the establishment media. Just like they said you were crazy if you questioned what happened to Seth Rich when they said he got killed in a botched robbery where they didn't take his watch, didn't take his wallet, didn't take his cell phone, didn't take anything. So they always, so if you noticed that they were talking about pizza as a code word for something or grape soda, they made it out to be crazy. But anyway, here, if you want to know about Pizzagate, here is Ben Swan telling you about it.
It actually comes from the WikiLeaks release of hacked emails from Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta.
By the way, this aired on CBS News in Atlanta when he was still employed there, and then they got tired of him telling these kind of uncomfortable truths.
In all, WikiLeaks dumped around 50,000 email messages, and it was from those emails that the claims that John Podesta may be part of a child sex trafficking ring come from. Now, to be clear, not one single email in the Podesta emails discusses child sex trafficking or pedophilia. That is a fact. But there are dozens of what seem to be strangely worded emails dealing with pizza and handkerchiefs. Self-described online investigators say that those words in the emails about pizza and the talk of handkerchiefs is code language used by pedophiles.
So just to remind you where this all came from, this didn't come out of nowhere. WikiLeaks got hacked, got a hold of emails from Tony Podesta's brother, John Podesta. Tony Podesta was Hillary Clinton's chief campaign manager. He had lots of jobs like that, Tony Podesta, right? I think he even worked for, could you look up Tony Podesta's, his resume? So
when the Blink-182 guy wanted to find out about UFOs or Lou Elizondo, he wrote an email to Podesta, Tony Podesta, and said, I just want to serve. Is that weird?
That is weird.
Podesta, a former advisor to politicians like Bill Clinton and Ted Kennedy, he shaped federal lobbying for decades.
So he was an advisor to Bill Clinton, to Ted Kennedy, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager. Anything else?
Recognized as top lobbyist by The Hill and Washingtonian multiple times.
Okay.
Ooh, top lob.
So his brother's emails got hacked, got released through WikiLeaks, and that's where all the people started to notice that they're using this terminology of pizza and grape soda, even hot dogs. And so let's keep going. We'll be right back with more of this story after a brief message from our sponsor. Hey, guess what? Gold is booming again. As of January 26, gold is trading around $5,000 per ounce, and silver is trading around $110 per ounce, which is almost a 50%.
Read any mainstream report, and they indicate that Comet Ping Pong Pizza was somehow linked to this fake story and has no relation to anyone involved. But the truth is, that's not true either. What media is ignoring is that the Comet Ping Pong Pizza place is actually referenced in the Podesta emails at least a dozen or so times, and that the owner of that place, James Alfantis, is a friend of John Podesta. He was actually named, this is kind of strange, by GQ magazine as one of the top 50 most powerful people in Washington. Yes, we're talking about a pizza parlor owner. Now let's talk facts here. There is no solid evidence that Comet Ping Pong Pizza is being used to run a child sex trafficking ring. But there are some very strange connections between Comet Ping Pong Pizza and a second pizza place 2 doors over, Besta Pizza, and the accusations of pedophilia. Now, this is where things start to get strange when you research this story. Now, to begin, I need to show you a 2007 unclassified FBI document. That document, according to the FBI, contains commonly used symbols by pedophiles to express their preference in children. I want you to see these images here. These are the images. Notice this one on the end, the triangle. That image signifies something called boy love. The pizza place next door to Comet Ping Pong Pizza, Besta Pizza, well, this was their logo until only a few weeks ago. Clearly, you can see that the Besta logo actually contains the same image, I'm going to show you again, as that boy lover image. Interestingly, after Pizzagate investigators pointed this out, Besta Pizza changed their logo, and there it is now. They removed the triangle. Also, Comet Ping Pong, owned by Alphantis, is the place where a number of performance artists perform regularly. 2 of the groups that perform there, who you can see advertised, by the way, on this Comet Ping Pong poster, include a group called Heavy Breathing and another group called Sex Stains. Well, if you check out the YouTube videos by these bands, Heavy Breathing has songs that do joke about pedophilia, and the band Sex Stains has a video that includes, and you see it right there, that same boy lover symbol. It's nearly identical to the one that the FBI does say is a pedophile code symbol for boy love. As I said, there are some strange things there. As for the owner of the pizza place, James Alphantis, well, he was one time in a relationship with David Brock, who ran Media Matters for America. Well, since Pizzagate began to blow up online, he has made his Instagram profile, Jimmy Comet, private. But an archive search of Instagram reveals a number of strange photographs and words with strange and disturbing images associated with them. Look, to the point where we can't show you those pictures. We're not even going to describe them to you because some viewers would find it too disturbing to share on TV. Now let's talk about the Podesta brothers, because remember, it was John Podesta's email that was hacked. In those leaked Podesta emails, John Podesta talks about his close relationship with Dennis Hastert, the former Speaker of the House, who was recently sentenced to 15 months in prison for abusing boys years ago. He was referred to by the judge as a serial child molester. According to the Washington Post, visitors to Tony Podesta's home in Falls Church got an eyeful when they walked into a bedroom at the Podesta residence hung with multiple color pictures by Katie Grannon, a photographer known for documentary-style pictures of naked teenagers in their parents' suburban homes. And to be clear, that just begins to scratch the surface of how strange some of this stuff is. And bear in mind, we can't get into a lot of the real details of it because of the limits on broadcasting this on television. But it is some very strange stuff. Now, keep in mind, again, there is no proof here that there is a child sex ring being operated out of a DC pizza parlor. Investigators have already proven there's nothing to the story, right? Well, actually, no. And that's what you need to know. For all that is here, there has not been one single public investigation of any of this, not from local police, not from the FBI, no one. And that has to be the big question, not for Podesta or for pizza parlor owners, but for law enforcement. Based on what may be or may not be here, the big question is, why hasn't any investigation taken place?
And the craziest fake news of all.
So that, and it goes on, and that's him trying
this
to.
Good Catholic boy
Good
says
Catholic
there's nothing to see here.
Yes. So there you go. It keeps the pizza keeps popping up in the Epstein. We'll be right back with more of this story after a brief message from our sponsor. That's just a brief overview of what that was about. What else would you tell people about the Pizzagate story? Like,
I would say all your worst nightmares are true. And they're not going to go look. I just was on a show that they'd take down because somebody must have they told me the premise of looking at these Epstein files, and then the guy wanted to talk about we should stay in Ukraine, the idiot, and he was a kabod scumbag, I'm sure. And so they're trying to downplay this right now. And most people, you're going to see who's who, because the people that want to know can find out, and the people don't want to know, you're going to see which ones are pure cattle. You're a cow if you're not on your own looking into this right now at these files. The interview with Bannon and him is insane. Have you seen it?
I watched the first, I would say, 20 minutes. There's a video that got released recently of Steve Bannon interviewing Jeffrey Epstein, and he's talking about international finance, and he sounds like a used car salesman, and he doesn't really even sound like he knows what he's talking about.
He's like Woody Allen.
He talks about when the dollar inflates, he really means deflates. He's making, I've only watched 20 minutes and he's making lots of mistakes. Jeffrey Epstein. He's not a smart guy. It doesn't sound like he's a smart guy.
He's a construct 100% out of the gate. He's not a guy that was such a bad genius that moved his way up. That's what this moron was trying to say to me earlier. Oh, and this bad apple wormed his way in. And
no, he didn't.
He was picked out from the start by David Rockefeller, he said, and Henry Kissinger to sit on the Trilateral Commission at age 30.
At age
He's
30.
that dumb at that age, but at 30, he was so brilliant. They said, you got to sit on the Trilateral Commission.
Yeah.
I mean, how insane, dude.
A math teacher from the Dalton School. That's the only thing on his resume. But we got to get you on the Trilateral Commission.
He shouldn't have had that job at Dalton. He should have never had that. That's a very high-end school.
Right. Come see us on stand-up tour. We'll be in Lansing.
Could you imagine a world where the top 1%, the elites of our society, the ruling class, the ones who run the government and are pulling the strings behind everything, are secretly involved in some of the most depraved things that you could ever possibly imagine? I'm getting a feeling of deja vu. I feel like I've heard this story before somewhere. Nowadays, that might not be that hard to believe, but back in 2016, this was something that was unfathomable to most people. How's it going, everyone? Welcome or welcome back. My name is Chase, and today we're talking about Pizzagate. So when Pizzagate started gaining traction during the heated 2016 election cycle on places like Poll, 4chan's political board, it wasn't hard to initially dismiss the whole thing as nothing more than a crazy alt-right conspiracy. But I think it's worth revisiting the theory in modern times, especially in light of recent events. Let me say first and foremost that I have no political bias here, and all I care about is the evidence that has been presented. My goal is not to convince you that Pizzagate is real, nor is it to disprove it. All I'm here to do is present to you the theory as a whole and all the supporting evidence, and then you can come to your own conclusions. I'll also note here that I've spent over a month going down this rabbit hole, and every mainstream source is so quick to say that it's debunked and there's no truth behind it at all, but I haven't seen a single one of them actually debunk any of the evidence. But you should obviously take their word for it because they probably have hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars even, and I'm just a little chud in my room sitting at my computer, so I'm sure they just have more information that I don't and no one else does for some reason. Viewer discretion, of course. We're going to be talking about some dark shit here, so if you don't want to watch that, this is not the video for you. That all said, I hate to say it, but don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and let's get right into it. Pizzagate sparked in 2016 when WikiLeaks published over 20,000 emails from the inbox of John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman during her presidential run. Immediately after these leaks were published, people online began scanning these emails line by line, finding many strange references and jokes that sparked suspicion that there was something more going on here. Before we go over some of these emails, it's important to note here that while the interpretations of the coded language within the emails is unsubstantiated, the emails themselves are completely legitimate. The Podesta emails were reviewed and confirmed to be authentic by multiple US intelligence agencies, including the CIA, FBI, and the NSA, which is the National Security Agency. So while the interpretations of these emails can be debated, nobody is disputing the authenticity of the emails themselves. Of course, I can't talk about all 20,000 emails here, and most of them are mundane and irrelevant to what we're here to talk about today, but here are a few of the most notable ones that helped fuel the initial theory. One of the first emails that really caught people's attention was sent by Susan Sandler, a philanthropist and political donor who did donate to Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign run, to John Podesta. The email reads, "Hi John, the realtor found a handkerchief. I think it has a map that seems pizza related. Is it your ruse? They can send it if you want. I know you're busy, so feel free not to respond if it's not yours or you don't want it. I just came from checking the field house and I have a square cloth handkerchief, white with black, that was left on the kitchen island. Happy to send it via mail if you let me know where I should send it." It's not hard to see why this would catch people off guard. What is a map that seems pizza related on a handkerchief? What the fuck does that even mean? Well, coincidentally, the handkerchief code is a color-coded system that people use to communicate their interests and pleasures non-verbally. Different colors relate to different acts or things that people are into, and I will not elaborate farther on that. If it's that important to you, you can look that up on your own time. These people are like old boomers, so maybe they just communicate differently and they have some dementia going on. But again, what is a pizza-related map? What even is that? Another email that caught people's attention was sent to John Podesta by Herbert Sandler, who was at the time a co-CEO of Golden West Financial Corporation, a major political donor to the Clinton campaign. Now Herbert Sandler is burning in hell. I'm joking. Rest in peace, Herbert Sandler. I'm sure he did nothing wrong at all. Mary and John, I think you should give notice when changing strategies which have been long in place. I immediately realized something was different by the shape of the box, and I contemplated who would be sending me something in the square-shaped box. Lo and behold, instead of pasta and wonderful sauces, it was a lovely, tempting assortment of cheeses. Yummy. I'm awaiting the return of my children and grandchildren from their holiday travels so that we can demolish them. Thank you so much. I hope you and your gang are well. I miss you both. Best wishes. Throw a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Herb. P.S. Do you think I'll do better playing dominoes on cheese than pasta? The thing that stood out as weird to people is that last line. It's just worded in such a strange way. People don't typically refer to eating something as being on something. People online began theorizing that cheese and pasta and these terms used for food were actually code word for something else. That something else being kids. And I know that's quite the leap in logic to make, but it's not the only example of strange references to food in these emails. Like this email sent from Tony Podesta, John Podesta's brother, would love to get a pizza for an hour. Like again, what does that mean? If we're just talking about lunch, that is not a normal way to say that. Imagine your friend gets a hold of you and they say, hey dude, you want to go get a pizza for about an hour? Like what? What does that mean? This one is in a long chain of emails, so I'll spare you from me reading the entire thing. But the part that stood out to people here was Bonnie will be Uber service to transport Ruby, Emerson, and Maeve Lozado, 11, 9, and almost 7. So you'll have some farther entertainment, and they will be in that pool for sure. Excuse me? What? That obviously sounds really bad. And unfortunately, there's no context that makes it sound any better. And it just gets weirder because there's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down with this woman. Reportedly, Lozado ran a website known as Evie's Crib, which was kind of like a blog. It's hard to confirm because as soon as people started talking about this, it was removed almost immediately. But if this blog is real, it looks really bad. The website apparently featured many pictures of Lozado around young children, including her step-granddaughter, Evie. The header of the website reads, Evelyn is growing up. Soon she will be the queen of the entire US of A. Right now, for a limited time only, you can spend some time with her online, raw and uncut. Take advantage of this now, as in the future, she will have the power of life and death over you. First of all, why are people spending time online with your granddaughter at all? And then raw and uncut, that is just a really weird way to describe that. Whoever was running this website categorized these posts with labels so you can find exactly what you're looking for easily. Posts were labeled under categories such as psychopath, evil white bitch, filth, malpractice, discomfort, manipulation, and Ambien.
Sorry.
Ambien, for those who don't know, is a prescription drug that is classified as a hypnotic and is used to treat insomnia short term. One of the side effects of Ambien is that it wipes your memory. Many people have no recollection of anything else that occurred or what they did after dosing. Why would that be a category on this blog that she apparently uses to post pictures of her children and grandchildren? That's really anyone's best guess. Another picture on this blog shows a baby after bath time, and while not inherently sinister, it's definitely a little bit weird even though you can't see anything. But the caption here is what really stands out. It ends with, unrated version of this photo available only to premium subscribers. At the absolute best, if this website is real, which again I can't confirm, this is an incredibly weird and tasteless joke to make. This is something that I feel uncomfortable even saying right now. The last email we'll cover for right now is sent by Maria Abramovich to Tony Podesta and later forwarded to his brother, John Podesta. Google describes Abramovich as a conceptual performance artist who has pushed the boundaries of performance art as a visual art form since the 1970s. Personally, I would just say that she's a freak, but anything is art, right? Dear Tony, I am so looking forward to the spirit cooking dinner at my place. Do you think you will be able to let me know if your brother is joining? All my love, Marina. Marina Abramovich. I think I called her Maria a second ago, but anyways, it seems innocent enough at first glance. But what is spirit cooking? I mean, probably just some unconventional or traditional way of cooking if I had to guess. But it actually turns out that's not what it is at all. You see, spirit cooking is an art form or occult ritual invented by Abramovich, inspired by the idea that ghosts feed off of intangible things like light, sound, and emotion. For this reason, her recipes involve things like evocative instructions for actions and thoughts, and bodily fluids. A few excerpts from her cookbook are as follows. With a sharp knife cut deeply into your middle finger of your left hand, eat the pain. Look in the mirror for as long as it is necessary for your face to disappear. Don't eat the light. A moment ago, I referred to spirit cooking as an art project or an occult ritual, and I wasn't being facetious. This is how Abramovich herself views her work. In an AMA on Reddit, Marina says herself that the context is what makes something art or not. Quote, everything depends on which context you are doing what you are doing. If you are doing the occult magic in the context of art or in a gallery, then it is art. If you're doing it in a different context, in spiritual circles or private house or on TV shows, it is not art. The intention, the context for what it is made, and where it is made defines what art is or not. So in her own words, they are doing an occult ritual. If you're curious to see this spirit cooking, you can find a video online of Abramovich giving one of these artistic performances herself as demonstration. The video shows Abramovich writing phrases from her cookbook on a wall in pig's blood and then dousing the statue of a small child in it. Now, of course, there's no way to say for sure if John Podesta attended this spirit cooking event or not, but coincidentally, in photographs from around that time, John Podesta can be seen with a band-aid on his left hand's middle finger. And people online have also mentioned that his hands, and particularly his fingers, are awfully scarred, as if they've been deeply wounded repeatedly. But I'm sure that's unrelated. Clearly, these are really bad optics, and we've already reached a point where the absolute best case scenario is that these people are involved in the occult and are doing blood rituals in private. People who are powerful, ruling class members of society are being invited to, in private, perform ceremonies and worship old world gods like Moloch and Baal, but more on that in a second. This is where James Alefantis and his world famous pizza come in, and it only gets weirder. So who is James Alefantis? Well, he's an entrepreneur who owns Comet Ping Pong, a pizza restaurant located in Washington, D.C., and also a location that was frequently mentioned in the Podesta emails. He's also one of the most powerful and influential people in the nation that you've never heard of. Despite being nothing more than a restaurant owner, GQ listed him as one of the 50 most powerful people in Washington in an article published in 2012. GQ writes, liberal 20-somethings in khakis drink beer and eat pizza at Alefantis-owned Comet Ping Pong. More established progressives wine and dine next door at Alefantis-owned Buck's Fishing Camping. Alefantis is also the board president of Transformer, the contemporary art gallery that shamed the Smithsonian for removing an installation offensive to right-wingers. When it comes to DC radical chic, Alefantis is unsurpassed. If you don't know him, you aren't wearing your scarf right. So basically, this restaurant owner is the pretentious king of the woke. And if you're left-wing and you don't know who James Alefantis is, you must not be wearing your scarf right. Get out of my pizza shop, you peasant. When it comes to radical chic in DC, I am undefeated. Anyways, if this guy is one of the 50 most powerful people in our nation's capital, he must make some pretty good pizza, or have connections somewhere else, right? Well, James Alefantis is a gay man who was involved in a relationship with David Brock, who was chief of Media Matters, a major media organization tied to the Democratic Party, until he left in 2022. David Brock also founded Correct the Record, a super PAC created in 2016 to support the Clinton campaign. At a surface level, this doesn't seem that weird, and it does help explain some of the political power and influence that James Alefantis has. But then people found his Instagram account, @JimmyComet, and as you can probably guess, it only gets weirder. We'll start with this picture that he had up on his Instagram showing a young child being held in a man's arms. Nothing wrong with that, but the caption of this picture is #ChickenLovers. Chicken lover is well-known coded language that was used in the 1994 documentary film Chicken Hawk that focuses on homosexual relationships with a large age gap. An age gap so large that it makes the relationship itself criminal. There's also this image that appears to be of a walk-in cooler being referred to as the kill room in the comments. Alefantis captioned this picture, "Oh yeah, this looks fun," And then he went into the comments under his own post and wrote #murder. And like with everything else here, this is really only barely scratching the surface. There are countless weird pictures and captions from the Jimmy comment Instagram, and if we went through all of them, we would be here all day. There's this picture of a young child with euros in his mouth, and Jimmy comment writes, #Karis James loves spending euros. There's this picture of a baby doll holding a sign that says, German baby, $1,200, please do not touch. Jimmy comment writes, way overpriced. There's this picture of a young child with their hands taped to a ping pong table. And in the comments again, someone else writes, #Karis James. Karis James seems to be a recurring thing referenced in Jimmy Comment's captions and comments, and it's really anyone's best guess what that could be. But coincidentally, there is a small Caribbean island or island named Little St. James. That Caribbean island named Little St. James happened to be owned by a now very famous financier who was from New York. I'm sure you've seen that guy's name in the news recently. And of course, this was years before anyone knew what was happening at that island. That wouldn't come until 2019. Then people realized that Jimmy Comment's profile picture on Instagram wasn't a picture of him, it was actually a picture of a statue. Nothing weird about that, except that this specific statue was the statue of Antinous. Antinous was a Greek pubescent who got involved in a relationship with Roman Emperor Hadrian, who was in his late 40s, and he's specifically known as the Greek boy lover. Now, this wasn't seen as anything bad in the ancient world societal norms, but of course we look at that a lot differently today. And this easily could have just been a coincidence, but in the bigger picture and everything else being considered, it's not hard to see why it would raise some questions. And that's really what this entire theory is based off of. How many coincidences are you willing to overlook in order to believe the official narrative that there's nothing else going on here? Even if you think this is just a bunch of conspiracy nonsense, it's not hard to see why so many people buy into it, because in order to believe there's nothing else going on, you have to chalk so many things up to coincidence and just overlook them. The cryptic emails, the occult rituals being mentioned in the emails, the profile picture, the pictures posted on the Instagram. And there's also the elephant in the room of why is this man who is attracted to other men, so he has no kids of his own, spending so much time around so many different young children? Putting aside the weird contexts and captions of these pictures, who even are these children? And clearly I'm not the only one wondering that, because even Snopes notes how strange his Instagram was and how James Alefantis does not have any children, and neither do his closest associates. And they also note how it was privated only 2 days after it was found, so clearly he knew how bad this all looked. And they even say in this same article that Pizzagate is false and it's all nonsense and not real at all. So even they can't just overlook this. They have to address the elephant in the room and be like, yeah, this guy's Instagram page is really fucking weird, and we actually have no clue who these kids are. And again, that's overlooking all the other stuff. Even if we knew how these kids were connected to James Alefantis, the pictures would still be really weird. The context of them, the captions. But on top of all of that, this is a guy with a boyfriend, so the kids clearly aren't his, and his closest associates and his friends don't have any children. While none of this is hard evidence of anything criminal happening, it really does make you wonder what's really going on here, and that's a genuine question. I would love for somebody to explain to me how this is all very innocent in nature and there's nothing weird going on, and I'm open to that explanation, I just haven't heard it. All of this just looks very weird, and it seems like the farther down this rabbit hole you go, you're left with more questions than answers. All I'm saying is that when you connect all the dots together, it really doesn't look good, and it does make you wonder if there's more going on here than what we know. Speaking of connecting the dots, James Alefantis has this picture of Marina Abramovich posted to his Instagram. So at the very least, he's a fan of her work, which I would say isn't exactly normal. I don't think I've ever personally met a Marina Abramovich fan, and I think most people don't even know who the hell that is. James Alefantis also has connections to Tony Podesta, John Podesta's brother. Here they are pictured together in what seems to be some sort of campaign or fundraiser taking place at Comet. Doesn't really matter, but there they are. Okay, but that could just be a campaign. That doesn't really prove that they know each other, right? Well, here's another picture from the event that is much more candid, and it was posted to Jimmy Comet. He is literally brushing elbows with Tony Podesta in front of a cake, and side note, this guy is absolutely cheesing. Whether they know each other well or not, clearly Alphonsus is very happy to be there next to Tony Podesta. And this just raises even more questions, especially when you look into Tony Podesta's art collection. And that's a whole nother can of worms that I'm not going to open here. All I'll say is that if you look at this guy's art collection, it feels illegal. It feels like I'm doing something wrong seeing it on my computer, and it's all over this guy's walls. When I started researching this, I went in hoping to find answers to some of this, but it doesn't seem like there are any. Everyone's very quick to tell you that this is all conspiracy and it's made up nonsense, and that very well might be the case, but nobody actually shows you where it's been disproven. Now let's talk about some of the symbolism that people have noticed, because I know I've said it a few times at this point, but it really does just get weirder and weirder. In 2007, an FBI document leaked showing specific symbols that predators use to identify each other. While looking at this document, people noticed that these symbols appear quite frequently in businesses, logos, and imagery of not only Comet Pizza, but surrounding businesses as well. For starters, Comet Pizza had this Play, Eat, and Drink, or PED logo on their website, which many people believe resembles one of these symbols. On the subject of Comet Pizza's website, the website was hacked in 2016, and the hacker shared an apparent members-only section. This members-only area was password protected, but when a password was entered, it brought you to a downloads page. On this page, you're able to download various large zip files, but each one requires a specific download key. Keep in mind, this is a pizza place. What could possibly be the reason to have a members-only section on the website with downloadable files available? And what is in these folders that is so exclusive that each one requires a unique password in order to be able to download it? And this wasn't some staff-only area of the website, which even that wouldn't really make any sense, but there were apparently 110 people in this exclusive pizza club. And again, once this came out, the entire section of the website disappeared, which really does make you wonder, why? It's already bizarre that it was there to begin with, but why was it removed once the public found out about it? Again, assuming this is all real, because I don't have a way to verify it myself at this point. It was apparently deleted 10 years ago, but why did they try to bury it? Why did they try to cover it up? What's there that they don't want you to see? While looking into Comet Pizza, some people noticed something peculiar about the logo of Besta Pizza, another pizza place in Washington, D.C., located only 2 blocks down from Comet. Besta Pizza's logo is literally the boy lover symbol from the FBI document. Of course, this could be a coincidence, but again, as soon as people started talking about this online and pointing it out, Besta Pizza immediately changed their logo and removed the symbol. Could they have just genuinely not known this, and then as soon as people start talking about it online, they realize and change it? Yeah, sure. And to be honest, Besta Pizza was kind of put in a lose-lose situation, because if they ignore what's going on and don't do anything, people are going to point to the symbolism and say they're involved. But if they do something like change their logo, people are going to say, oh, well, obviously they did know about this symbolism, and now they're trying to cover it up. Some people online have made the claim that Besta Pizza, which is now closed, was owned by Andrew Klein, who worked with the Human Trafficking Prosecution Unit under Obama's Department of Justice. And if that was the case, it would be a glaring red flag and would make the symbolism in the logo being a coincidence seemingly impossible. However, doing my own research, that doesn't seem to be the case, and I would say that there's a very small probability that there's any truth behind that claim at all. The DC Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs listed Besta Pizza under the corporate entity Uptown Pizza Inc., and Andrew Klein is listed as a non-commercial registered agent, which means that he was a third party associated with Besta Pizza, most likely a lawyer, but definitely not the owner. I say most likely a lawyer because Veritas Law Firm in Washington, D.C. has an Andrew J. Klein listed as their co-founder, who's been representing business and real estate clients for over 30 years. And from his picture, he's visibly a different person than the one associated with the Obama administration. If you ask me to point to one part of this whole theory that I think is most likely to be just a coincidence, it would be this part. And I really do think that these two men are just both named Andrew J. Klein. But who knows? Maybe the lawyer isn't a real person and he's actually a honeypot designed by the deep state, in order to make the whole conspiracy more easy to delegitimize. I don't think that's likely, but crazier things have happened. Just across the street from Comet Ping Pong and Besta Pizza is a French restaurant known as Terrasol Gallery. And again, just like Besta Pizza, as soon as people started talking about this logo online, it vanished from their website. They were put into the same lose-lose situation, and again, people took this response and action as an admission of guilt. And again, if there weren't so many other coincidences, I don't think that people would have harped on this point so much, but there are so many other coincidences and people can only lend you so much credence. Also on the Terrasol website was a picture of Hillary Clinton there, and I will not comment any farther on that. She was there though, and that's a pretty strong endorsement. The food was probably really good. Of course, people were also looking into the Comet logo at this time, and while there was no blatant symbology that was mentioned in the FBI document, people did find something strange. Now stay with me because this is gonna sound like a reach, and it did to me at first too, but people pointed out that the Comet logo features crescent moons similar to some depictions of Moloch. For those of you who don't know, Moloch is a deity from the Hebrew Bible strongly associated with child sacrifice. Some depictions of Moloch, especially later depictions, show him with a star on his forehead and 2 crescent moons around either one of his hands. I know this seems like a massive reach, but guess what old world god's name appears in an Instagram post by Jimmy Comet? That's right, in this post on Jimmy Comet's Instagram showing off some Christmas presents he received, if you zoom in on the bottom left, you can see the word Moloch. That is so strange. And it's not like it's in a book or anything either. It looks like it's printed out on a single sheet of paper. Personally, I've never received any sort of gift, especially not a Christmas gift, referencing Moloch or any other deity. Maybe this is normal and I'm just out of the loop or something, but to me, that seems really weird. Especially when you keep in mind all the ties to the occult in Marina Abramovich. It's all just so strange, and when that's the best case scenario, when the best case scenario is that you do occult rituals and worship old world deities that are connected to human sacrifice, it doesn't exactly leave a positive impression on people. The Pizzagate conspiracy all coalesced into one incident that took place at Comet Ping Pong, and my good friend Mr. Pild is going to jump in and give you the rundown on the entire event.
In 2016, a crazed lunatic, driven mad by absurd conspiracy theories, stormed into Comet's Pizza armed with a rifle. Totally incoherent and insane, of course, he starts firing wildly at everyone and hurts no one, and only destroys one very peculiar and convenient item. According to the official Department of Justice narrative, 29-year-old Edgar Welch did indeed walk into Comet's Pizza armed with a AR-15 and a revolver. Customers and employees alike fled, while Edgar himself remained inside of the restaurant for about 20 minutes. What was he doing in there? Well, he found a locked closet door, and he tried to jimmy it open. But when he couldn't, he decided to fire rounds into the door. After that, he didn't try and continue to get inside. He didn't break down the door. He stashed away his rifle and his revolver, walks outside unarmed, and is then arrested and sentenced to 4 years in prison. Now, what was inside that closet randomly that happened to get hit and destroyed? It was a computer, and everything on it was now gone. I don't know about you, but even before looking deeper into it, even the official narrative is very weird. It's just way too clean for an active shooter event like this. Historically speaking, these are not so happy ending. Authorities claim that the AR-15 and the revolver were recovered inside of the restaurant, and then they discovered a shotgun hidden in his trunk with some ammunition. But one of the only eyewitnesses to this event, a lawyer in Maryland named Sharif, who was there with his wife and kids, claims that Edgar walked in initially with a shotgun. While this whole thing was going down, Sharif was making a series of tweets detailing the situation, while he also claims that Edgar stashed away the shotgun potentially for future use. In the official narrative, it does describe Edgar stashing weapons away for potential future use. However, my problem lies in the discrepancy between what kind of weapon. And that's because you don't have to be a firearms expert to tell the difference between a shotgun and an AR-15. They're very distinct. They have very distinct profiles and silhouettes. Anyways, get this. Edgar Welch is an actor listed on IMDb. Now that alone would be just a crazy, weird coincidence, right? But his father, Harry Welch, owns a media company by the name of Forever Young Productions. You can't make this shit up. That's not where the oddities end, though. Harry Welch is a creature in his own. According to his IMDb bio, Harry Welch is a very, very distinguished fella. Let's take a look at it. Written over 30 screenplays. He took up karate in his 30s. That's pretty late, pretty old to be fighting. And then went undefeated in 200 matchups. Wow. Holy moly. He holds 7 Guinness Book World Records for one-armed, one finger, and one fingertip push-ups. Very impressive. Not only is he a physical specimen, but he's got a soft side too. He served as a foster family to 3 different children and is an avid animal lover, being a rescuer of animals for 30 years, rescuing tigers, jaguars, leopards, servals, and operating a no-kill shelter for dogs, housing up to 55 at a time. They have found forever homes for over 300. So sweet. Things start to get a little bit more serious, though, in his bio, saying he worked on federal, state, and local task forces fighting the war on drugs. Served 5 years with the Rowan County ABC Police. Side note, the ABC Police, I don't know what that is or what that stands for, because I couldn't find any information on what the hell the ABC Police was. Stakeouts, watching illegal stills, patrolling the county for suspected bootleggers, even working with the ATF. Gross. Even the President of the United States in 1988, Ronald Reagan himself recognized the excellence of Harry Welch because he hand-selected him and 15 others to check out various military installations, even giving them national clearance and letting them check out the Cheyenne Mountain Nuclear Bunker, which is a command alternative for NORAD. That's big boy stuff right there. Why would goofy old Harry, owner of Forever Young Productions, need to explore a nuclear bunker? However, I think the weirdest highlight was one that stood out mainly because of the context. Served as executive director for Protect a Child, a national nonprofit organization to prevent abuse and abduction of children, appointed by Governor Jim Martin to the Governor's Commission on Child Victimization. In conjunction with this story and this conspiracy theory, that's a little weird. But what's weirder is the fact that this Protect a Child organization doesn't exist. At least I couldn't find anything on it. So as far as I know, this doesn't exist. So why would he put it in his bio? That's about as far as it goes for Harry Welch. I couldn't really find anything else, but I want to bring this back to Edgar because his story's not finished yet. So I like to remain skeptical when I dive deep into these subjects. So that way I don't get sucked into that I want to believe mindset, you know? Because I think that's pretty easy. I was asking myself, if he was really a part of this conspiracy, what would he gain from destroying that computer? What would be his motive to do that? And looking into Edgar's past, I think I found a fairly reasonable potential answer to that. See, previous to the charges that landed him a 4-year sentence after walking into Comet's Pizza, Edgar had struck a 13-year-old child in a reckless driving incident. And as a man who had previous DWI charges, he was facing a pretty serious sentencing. And if we're playing with the idea that some very powerful people needed a scapegoat or a way to get rid of some evidence or a way to maybe suppress these conspiracy theories that were making their ways out into the public, then I think it'd be a no-brainer if he was left between the choices of leaving his fate and his freedom up to the court system, potentially facing much harsher punishment, or, you know, walk into this pizza joint. Don't hurt anybody. Don't do nothing too bad. Just destroy this computer. Get 4 years, you know, fairly light, and then be on your way. Have your previous charges nullified. It's a good deal. I'd take that deal. Just some food for thought. Well, to finally wrap this chapter up, Edgar didn't even get to enjoy his freedom because 5 years after his release, in January of 2025, Edgar was killed in a officer-related shooting after a traffic stop. Apparently, he pulled a gun on officers, and no one knows why. Sounds a lot like a loose end tied up to me. But what do I know?
Big thank you to Ethan or Mr. Pilled for jumping in and going over that whole section. He's a really great dude. I've known him for about 5 years now, which is crazy. Time flies. But he makes really good videos. If you like the stuff that I post over here, there's a good chance that you'll like a lot of his content as well. So I'll leave a link to his stuff in the description and in the comments. Go check him out and tell him to post more often. He did a really good job, so I don't feel the need to yap too much about this. But again, just so many coincidences that you have to overlook. What are the chances that this guy is facing serious criminal charges before he decides to do something like this? It's not impossible, but it is a little bit weird. What are the odds that this guy, who happens to be an actor, decides to go into Comet with a rifle and do something like this and nobody gets hurt except the computer is destroyed? That's pretty convenient. Not impossible. I mean, maybe he was just a lunatic. Crazy people do crazy things all the time. But again, with everything else taken into consideration, it gets harder to ignore these oddities in the story. If it was just a few weird things, it would be much easier to say people are just drawing lines and connections where there really aren't any, and it's all just one crazy conspiracy theory. But when every single beat of the story is filled with these coincidences, it gets harder and harder for people to just overlook them and say, yeah, there's no chance that any of this is real. Maybe the official story is 100% true, and this really is nothing more than a conspiracy, and none of these things are connected at all in any way. But in the court of public opinion, you're going to have a really hard time convincing people of that. The human brain is designed to recognize patterns, so when seemingly all of this stuff is connected, you're going to have a really hard time convincing people that that's not the case. That pretty much summarizes the entire theory, or at least everything that I can cover here in a reasonable amount of time. The whole thing goes so incredibly deep that I would never be able to cover absolutely everything. If this does interest you, I highly recommend going down the rabbit hole yourself, because there's just an endless amount of theories and speculation online. But before we go, here are a bunch of other coincidences that I stumbled across when researching that I couldn't really fit into the main portion of this script. First of all, Hillary Clinton, who is seemingly very tied into this whole alleged scandal. She's very connected to all the people who are directly involved. Well, Frank Giestra, a member of the Clinton Foundation Board of Trustees, who's donated over $100 million to the foundation, helped fund the Al-Qaeda Project, a project focused on raising the living conditions of refugees. And the logo is literally the exact same as the symbol mentioned in the FBI document for Boy Lover. The Besta Pizza logo was pretty on the money with that same symbol. This is literally just that symbol. It's exact. It's not even a different color. It is just a giant blue spiraling triangle. Another person connected to the Clintons is Laura Silsby, the founder of New Life Children's Refuge. She went to Haiti in 2010 to help rehome orphaned children after the catastrophically destructive magnitude 7 earthquake. What a kind-hearted woman, right? Surely she would never traffic children. Well, guess what? She was caught by Haitian authorities smuggling 33 children on a bus across the Haitian border into the Dominican Republic. She was doing this without permission from Haiti, so illegal. And then when she was detained, it became quickly apparent that most of, if not all of these children, weren't even orphans. So she took essentially a class full of children, took them away from their families, and then tried to flee the country and cross the border. Well, she was held in Haiti facing charges of conspiracy and child abduction until Bill Clinton stepped in and got her charges reduced to arranging irregular travel. She served a 6-month sentence in Haiti and then was returned to the United States. And fun fact, this woman who tried to smuggle children across the border away from their families has since changed her name to Laura Gaylor, and has since been given an executive role at AlertSense, the company that provides the delivery infrastructure for Amber Alert. You know Amber Alert, the shit that pings your phone when a child goes missing? Yeah, a woman who was tried for child abduction is working for that company as an executive. That is so awesome. And then when Monica Peterson, the assistant director at the Human Trafficking Center in Colorado, began looking into the Clintons' involvement in Haiti, she was found dead. Of course, this was ruled to be caused by her own volition. Haven't heard that one before, right guys? And then there's one more slice to this story, and one that has largely been forgotten as time has moved on. It's something known as Cheesy Bay. This is the last time you'll hear me say this here, but I'm not asserting that this is true, and you should really take this last part with a grain of salt because it relies heavily on unproven claims. On April 21st, 2016, a Reddit throwaway account posted the question, why would there be 30-something Wi-Fi networks apparently coming from underneath a concrete pad? The user says that they had recently been working on a semi-urban farm property in Honolulu, and he then connected the man who owned the property to an eBay account selling faulty computer parts for ridiculous prices. The eBay accounts allegedly belonged to a man going under the aliases Biff Skipman and Dave Flintstone. Someone apparently managed to hack into his emails and found correspondence with Sasha Lord, a DC area mentor for at-risk children, and also the event organizer at Comet Ping Pong. Now, the reason that I specifically mentioned that you should take this part as a grain of salt is because these emails were never fact-checked or verified by any government agency or third-party source, unlike the Podesta emails, so we don't even know if these are true. But allegedly, this eBay seller and the event organizer at Comet Ping Pong had been put in touch by a person named Richard Windsor. Who is Richard Windsor? Well, it happens to be a known alias for the Environmental Protection Agency administrator, Lisa Jackson, who is also a Clinton Foundation board member. This part is true. She was caught using the fake email name Richard Windsor for who knows what, right? So it was already known that she had been communicating under the alias of Richard Windsor. So it's very plausible that people online already knew that she was communicating under this alias, and then they added this alias into this theory or story to kind of make it seem more credible. But coincidentally, Dave Flintstone, the man who was apparently running this eBay account, also happens to be the name of a man who founded a distillery in Hawaii. If you remember, OP said that they had been working on an urban farm area in Honolulu. This bag from OP's pictures also resembles a bag that Dave Flintstone has been photographed with. And there's one more email from the Podesta leaks that I haven't mentioned to you yet. Man, I miss you. The next 3 months are going to be rougher internally than in Beijing, between 7th and 1600. No fun. Hope you're doing okay. I'm dreaming about your hot dog stand in Hawaii. This email was sent from Todd Stern, another Democratic donor and a person tied in with the Clintons. That seems like a weird thing to say. I'm dreaming about your hot dog stand in Hawaii. Well, this is a very recent revelation, but in April of this year, a man named David Flintstone, who is a resident of Hawaii, was arrested in Colombia for soliciting a minor. Upon responding, the officers found the 60-year-old foreigner in the company of a 15-year-old. Initial investigations indicate that the man had arranged an encounter with her worth 1 million pesos. The David Flintstone that was arrested in Colombia also happens to be the same age as the one who founded the dispensary. They're both 60 years old. For whatever reason, the man's face is blurred in the article, so there's no way to tell for sure if this is the same person. But if these are two different men, that is a wild coincidence, because they would have to share the same first name, the same last name, be the same age, and both be from Hawaii. And even though the man arrested in Colombia had his face blurred, they do vaguely resemble each other, especially in the body structure. As of right now, like I said, there's no official confirmation that these are the same people, so we'll just have to wait and see if anything else comes out. But those odds have to be like 1 in a billion. That is crazy. Especially in Hawaii, I just looked it up, and the population is under 1.5 million people, so it's a very small state. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Please let me know in the comments what you think about all
that we want to bring to you today before we get into the nuances of the documents specifically and whether or not he's alive, etc. A couple of new updates. We heard from Todd Blanche, of course, from the Department of Justice, who's obviously been pushed out there. It's very curious that he's being pushed out there instead of Pam Bondi. Of course, they're really trying to elevate him within the administration. So how long until Pam Bondi is out? Hard to say. How long until Kash Patel is fired? Hard to say. But anyway, here he was speaking with Laura Ingraham about prosecutions specifically, like, hey, this evidence is pretty overwhelming that these people were there having sex with minors, fooling around with minors, taking pictures with minors, getting massages from minors. What the hell is going on here? Will anyone actually be prosecuted? And what did Todd Blanche have to say? Watch.
Well, as some of the people we saw on camera at the rallies, is there any chance that any of these individuals who partied with Epstein and engaged in relations with minors will be prosecuted? Any chance?
I'll never say no, and we will always investigate any evidence of misconduct. But as you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein, and so as horrible as it's not a crime to email with Mr. Epstein. And some of these men may have done horrible things, and if we have evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But it's also the kind of thing that the American people need to understand, that it isn't a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. It isn't a crime to have
Didn't look like that's all that was going on some of those photos. I mean, if the photos could speak, some of them look pretty bad.
That's right. And unfortunately, photos can't speak. And so we need witnesses and we need
Are there
evidence
videotapes that you all have? Or
It is a crime to have that on your phone. It is.
Right.
It is a crime.
Which we're going to get to here in a second, but go ahead.
I would like to introduce I can't, his name just fell out of my head. Blanche, I would say Vance, but conspiracy to commit a crime. Talking about committing, like if people are discussing the crimes committed, that is a crime. That is conspiracy.
Exactly. Well, Ro Khanna's not happy about it. Congressman Ro Khanna said, Todd Blanche dismisses what happened as men partying with Epstein. This is offensive to survivors. These are men making plans with Epstein, a pedophile, to go to Epstein's island where young girls are being raped and paraded around naked at parties. There should be an investigation where they're asked under oath what they saw and who raped and abused these girls. AC 360, Anderson Cooper 360. But anyway, to Natalie's point about having these emails or these communications or sharing photos, sharing videos, or these particular emails here where someone's talking about killing someone. I mean, these are emails that would rise to the level of criminality. Send photos of you and a child. Make me smile. Requesting basically child pornography.
Referencing a sex crime that had been done or was about to do, and then saying, send me pictures of it. And if you've gone through the documents at length, you see how many pictures are either blurred out or not. You know, when you go to a website and it looks like a little image, a placeholder, much of that is there. Back and forth, image. Those things are crimes, absolutely. You cannot have that on your phone. If you're a parent of any kind of child, you've always said, like, look, if your friend sends you something you think is inappropriate, don't forward it to mommy because that could get us really in trouble. You can tell me about it. You can show me on your phone. You cannot send it to me. I cannot have it. So the rest of us are treading lightly because it's a crime and they are blatantly just like, let's take something, let's share some. Awesome.
Well, the amount of minors involved in these photos, videos, evidence, documentation clearly goes against what Ben Shapiro told us. Remember this? This didn't age well.
The reason the FBI is not releasing them is because those tapes do not include underage people with third parties on Epstein Island. That is not what the tapes are. I also have sources in the federal government who are covering this stuff and have seen the documents. Okay, those tapes are just child porn. That's all. That's what they are. That's why the FBI is not releasing them. Okay. As far as the Epstein list, what I have been told by my sources is that there is no Epstein list, that basically there's a black book of Jeffrey Epstein contacts. And the vast majority of those contacts are already out there publicly. That's why you know names like Prince Andrew or Alan Dershowitz or some of the names that have been mentioned here.
Yeah. Okay.
Your sources suck.
Right.
Your sources are not good.
You better check your sources.
I think I know who his sources are. I mean, it sounds an awful lot like some of the other people I've heard talking about this. Mr. Patel, Bondi,
Bongino.
Right. Yeah.
So, one of the big revelations in this recent tranche of documents is Bill Gates and STDs and pandemic planning, like really trying to lay out exactly how they're going to unfold a pandemic, how they can do all of that, but having an STD that he got from Russian hookers. He didn't want it to give, how can I sneak and get antibiotics so I can sneak them to Melinda so that she doesn't know about it? Maybe I could hide them in a sandwich or something. So
that's very loving.
Right.
I don't want my wife to know about
what I'm
the
getting you for
STD.
Valentine's Day.
So, an STD preventing sandwich.
Here's a cupcake. Eat it and eat the whole thing.
It just shows they care. They care enough about you to make sure you're protected against the STDs they're exposing you to.
Can you imagine?
Well, no, he exposed her. He didn't want her to know about the exposure.
Yeah. She's like, why am I itchy all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from? Oh, because my husband just happened to be on Epstein Island with Russian hookers or whatever. Who the hell knows? Anyway, so Melinda Gates was just asked about this in an interview and finally addressing this. Of course, we haven't heard from her for a few years. I think talking to Gayle King or whatever on one of the morning shows a couple of years ago, and saying how she felt repulsed by Epstein when she met him. Now, finally addressing this, but I think she needs to go deeper. Like, watch this and tell me what you think. But I think she she knows things. She knows things, and I think it's time for her to come out publicly. Watch.
I have to acknowledge the elephant in the room at this moment. Your ex-husband, Bill, is named in the newest tranche of Epstein files. And
Yep.
there are a new alleged details about his past behavior. And I want to give you the opportunity to respond in whatever way you want to.
Well, let me say this. I think we're having a reckoning as a society, right? No girl should ever be put in the situation that they were put in by Epstein and whatever was going on with all of the various people around him. No girl. I mean, it's beyond heartbreaking, right? I remember being those ages those girls were. I remember my daughters being those ages, right? So for me, it's personally hard whenever those details come up, right? Because brings back memories of some very, very painful times in my marriage, but I have moved on from that. I purposely pushed it away and I moved on. I'm in a really unexpected, beautiful place in my life. So whatever questions remain there of what I can't even begin to know all of it, those questions are for those people and for even my ex-husband. They need to answer to those things, not me.
Well,
and I am so happy to be away from all the muck
Yeah.
that was there.
I have to put more words to the muck for context for our listeners. The emails in the files suggest that Bill Gates had additional affairs and that he tried to get medication to treat a sexually transmitted infection and that he was going to give you the medicine without you knowing. His representative has said all of this is false. It is not on you to have to respond to the details of that alleged behavior, but I wonder what your dominant emotion is when you read these news articles with these details.
Sad. Just unbelievable sadness. Unbelievable sadness, right? And again, I'm able to take my own sadness and look at those young girls and say, my God, how did that happen to those girls, right? And so for me, it's just sadness for, I left my marriage. I had to leave my marriage. I wanted to leave my marriage. I had to leave I felt I needed to eventually leave the foundation. So it's just sad. That's the truth, right? And it's kind of like, at least for me, I've been able to move on in life. And I hope there's some justice for those now women, right? We see them standing up in front of microphones in DC. What they went through is just unimaginable, I think.
Now, she seems obviously absolutely disgusted by it, as somebody in our chat room points out. But as someone points out, this disgust, but being part of a depopulation cult didn't bother her and all of the things that he was up to. So like this idea that she's she was a part of the foundation. She's intimately involved in a lot of the workings and dealings with the pandemic. She had to know. So like this idea that it's the muck, it's over here. I'm just going to be away from it. Nothing to see here. You got to ask those guys questions.
Right. She's so upset about young girls, but not realizing that their vaccination campaigns was sterilizing young girls in Africa. That's easily provable.
Right.
Did that bother you for young girls? And notice that she doesn't say it didn't happen. She doesn't refute it. She said, well, yeah, and she shudders. And then she says, well, I'm not the real victim. The girls were. And if, she were sort of an innocent party not knowing about this, which I've had sources tell me that, he had been under investigation for decades. So she did know. Then she would be a victim if she truly knew nothing and was being exposed to STDs and then drugged unknowingly. Absolutely, she would. But she's putting it outside like, I'm not the real victim here. Other people are. Those are the things. She's in a beautiful place now. She's in a beautiful place. Yeah. I don't know how beautiful it would be for the world to think that you were given STDs and drugs in that way.
Well, someone says in the chat, a big fat NDA, chicken my groin. which is one of my favorite screen names. Chicken My Groin says a big fat NDA that she probably signed. Maybe, I guess, to like leave the foundation, get it separated from all of that. I don't know. Like what you got to keep quiet about. Here's $20 billion. Keep quiet. Is she able to sidestep that?
I feel like
would she do that?
If you knew you'd been slipped an STD, that probably goes outside of an NDA. You can't really specifically.
Well, I mean, because the NDA would be specific for things, that you
like
know about.
Non-disparage about Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yeah, I guess it would be like non-disparaging. So she can't say anything negative about him, really. But I don't know.
Yeah, but an NDA cannot compel you to like, if you know of something illegal, you're not required to hide. That's not a legal NDA. Like if a crime was committed, you can't sign an NDA that forces you to not talk about it.
Right. And it can't cover things in perpetuity, right? I mean, I guess I don't know the legal side of it, but can an NDA sign things like in the future?
Yes. Well, yes, it can preclude things in the future. But what he's saying, if there's a crime, you don't have to hide that behind an NDA. So, the crime itself, clearly she knows that he's been abusing, allegedly, young women for a really long time and had illicit material on his computers. Is it a crime to drug your own spouse after giving them an STD? I think you could probably, I'm not a lawyer, but I think you could probably make a case. You can't drug people, even if they are your spouse,
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
no spike in my drinks, Clayton, on Valentine's Day.
No, I don't need to.
I'm not a sure thing.
All right. Hey, we've got more news to get to. We're going to talk about, was Epstein KGB? At least that's what the media would love you to believe. Also, is Epstein still alive? Other angles that we want to go into today. We also got a special guest coming up here shortly to talk about the Rothschilds piece of this and the sort of international banking cabal. Because it's not just about Epstein. Like, the story is she knew. Yeah, well, she certainly knew a lot. That's for sure. All right. Well,
I find it implausible that she did not know.
Yeah.
And I have heard reports from sources about his being under investigation since the early 2000s, and then those investigations disappearing. So I don't know how you could not know that there was a lot of smoke. Yeah, police
at your house.
That, computers being raided, things like that just magically disappeared. Early 2000s, decades. We're talking about decades. So, yeah, it's very implausible to believe that she didn't know. Well, the media is now trying to manufacture a link between Jeffrey Epstein and the Russian KGB. It would be comical if it wasn't so transparent what they're trying to not cover by leaning into Russia. Here's the Daily Mail telling us that Epstein was KGB. Look what I underlined there. Epstein was working on behalf of Moscow and possibly Israel. Maybe Israel. There's thousands of documents in which he implicates himself as being an agent of Israel and connected with Israeli prime ministers, Mossad, but okay, maybe he says, they say, they're just going to put that in the maybe bucket. But also the KGB angle is funny because the KGB was dissolved in the 90s with the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, Russia still does have an intelligence unit, but it's not called that anymore. So it's extremely lazy to think that in the 2000s, Epstein was KGB. Also, here's more proof. They say that he was Russian. He wore this hat, so got to be Russian. It is worth looking into, though. How did Epstein have so many connections to get Russian women, specifically Russian women, into New York? He had a well-documented affinity for Russian women. And in fact, if you go to the Epstein files on justice.gov and just search the terms Russian girls, you get over 150 pages of results, not just 150 results, but pages. And in 2016, this is a perplexing story. Again, let's put this in context and put it on the screen, and let's leave it there for a second. This is a 2016 profile on Jeffrey Epstein in page 6. And they are reporting that despite the fact that he has been convicted of soliciting minors for prostitution, he still is this playboy. So why in 2016 do you write this article knowing that this dude has been convicted and served jail time for prostituting minors? And then you put him, why write this? Why publish this? Why was this published, do you think? Anyway, let's put it back full screen if you can. It says that despite having been convicted of soliciting a minor for prostitution, he had contacts in Moscow who provided matchmaking services for both his Caribbean island, jokingly referred to as Little St. Jeff's, and his Manhattan townhouse. So this was known even before the world understood who Epstein was. Again, the journalists have no pass. They should have known he was convicted. And this guy does. He says as an aside, this is an awesome dude. He's basically the talented Mr. Ripley. Yes, he's gone to jail for prostitutes, but let's talk about his life of just a conveyor belt of Russian girls who he got through a matchmaking service. Okay, they said, it literally says in the article, these Russian ladies, when they land in New York City, they've got his phone number with them. So yes, that is odd, that Russian connection. How did that happen? We don't know yet. The thing is that even though Epstein was clearly connected to intelligence in Israel, it wasn't cleanly delineated like that. Now, we know this because of how Ghislaine Maxwell's father worked. You may recall that Daryl Cooper explained it this way on Tucker Carlson, that Ghislaine Maxwell's father, what's his name? Robert Maxwell is the one who introduced Ghislaine to Jeffrey Epstein, and they began to work together forever. And he trained him. He basically was a mentor. And listen to the way that he worked in his sort of international dark corners.
Again, with Maxwell, just like we talk about a lot of these other people, when I say he was an asset of Israeli intelligence, that doesn't mean he was on the payroll of Mossad. You know, he didn't have a rank in the Israeli intelligence community or something. He was a freelancer. He was a guy who was almost, and he looked at himself this way. He was almost like a sovereign himself. You know, he was not really like kind of a member of any country exactly. He was like this free-floating sovereign entity that would work between the nation states in the world. And that's very often what he did. So for example, you know, and this actually is an actual example when the Israeli government wanted to meet with the heads of the KGB in the 1980s. You can't exactly, I mean, without raising a ruckus or having it be a thing, you can't put the head of the Mossad on a plane and send him to Moscow to go meet with the head of the KGB. And so they would talk to Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell would go talk to them, and he'd be, you know, the kind of go-between and the deal maker and fixer.
Very common.
Right. And you know, I imagine you probably need those people if you're going to do these kind of things. Sure. And so.
Okay. So jokes aside about being connected to Russia, it's clear from the files he's connected to a lot of different places, and a lot of different places he acts as an arbiter of Israel. So yes, the Russian connection between Epstein is not zero. It cannot be. It's clear that he was a go-between between many countries. Now, how far into each country's leadership should be the question that every citizen of the world wants an answer to. For instance, there was one text exchange where he says that the Chinese have reached out about mathematics. Okay. We don't know if that includes high-level government mathematicians or just Chinese who want to talk about math. We don't know. The question is how many people in the upper echelons of these governments worked for or with or cooperated with Epstein? How deep is the shadow government in any given country? No one should get a pass, but for some reason, the media gives just one nation a pass. Look how many headlines we have about possible connection with Russia. And look how many headlines we have if you do just a simple Google News search for Epstein in Russia. None of them are American. All of them.
Epstein Israel, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What did I say?
Epstein Russia.
Epstein in Israel. Yeah, almost none of them are American. Most of them, it's Al Jazeera and other Middle Eastern places that are willing to look into this. The U.S. media treats Epstein as just a domestic sex scandal, not a foreign intelligence scandal, unless you can connect it to Russia. So there's no safe on-ramp for them after ignoring this for years. It means they would have to report on Ghislaine Maxwell's father, talk about intelligence-linked sexual blackmail as a tool, which clearly exists, and acknowledge their prior reporting failures, and they won't do it. So let me know why. Why this one pass for this one place, and our American media?
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the metropolitan.
Oh, okay. That's all I have to say on the subject. I don't know if
well, no, Kash Patel was just weighing in on that. So I'm
Oh.
just curious why Kash wanted to insert himself in your conversation there.
Oh, he says I'm wrong, so I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That's
Kash
got to be
Patel.
the final word.
Always right. Well, the official story about Epstein being alive is starting to come to light. And the official story from Dan Bongino and Kash Patel is that Jeffrey Epstein, of course, killed himself, hung himself in his cell. His body was found, case closed. After all, Dan Bongino told us he saw the evidence.
He killed himself. You want me to get, I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Seen the whole file. He killed himself. Really? The whole file? That, of course, was a lie. Many of us believe, based on evidence, that he was strangled and killed in his cell, not hung himself. But now there appears to be growing evidence that Epstein wasn't killed in that cell at all and might have actually been moved out and replaced with the corpse of someone else, and that he's very much alive and well. And yes, many investigators from day one have been saying this is the case. In fact, many of you watching right now have said, I've known he's been alive the whole time. Well, now they might be vindicated. You might be vindicated. According to documents found in the latest document dump and examining the corpse photos specifically, and you add all of this together, that he might be walking among us alive and well. Well, maybe not here right now, but somewhere safe and sound. So follow me here. The individual who anonymously posted this post on 4chan message board on the morning of Epstein's death, August 10th, 2019. These dates are important. So August 10th, the death date of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it's important to remember that he made this post on 4chan before Epstein's death was made public, okay, before the rest of us learned that he had been killed. He made this post before, and he claimed he witnessed weird happenings at the prison before Epstein's death, like in the days before. He also then says, but he doesn't say, it's very clear in this post, he doesn't say he witnessed this with his own eyes. What he's saying is he's relaying information that he's getting from, it seems like, one of the nurses on staff and one of the outside military, green dress military, one of the tower guards who let these individuals in. And he's relaying this information. So if someone was sharing, people were texting when all of this went down. So he made this post, again, before we all knew about it. Well, he has now been identified in the Epstein files. His name is Roberto Grigalva, if I'm saying that correctly, Grigalva. He's an officer. He was an officer at the Metropolitan Correction Center in New York. He has now been identified as the anonymous prison employee who posted this on 4chan. And the reason we know about this is thanks to the Southern District of New York issuing a subpoena to AT&T records and all of this to get the phone records to Apple, to get Apple iCloud information. Who posted this on 4chan? And where were the IP addresses? Where was it posted? And they were able to track it back to him, an employee at the correctional center. So what people are looking at there is just a list, is all of the documents related to that subpoena. So as I'm scrolling through, we got the AT&T phone records. We've got the subpoena from Apple. We've got all sorts of different information that was then brought to light as a result of the bank records, his banking records, all of it. So this Roberto, who verifiably worked at the prison, who verifiably posted this on 4chan, whose cell phone records, IP addresses, bank records, all of it confirmed, posted this. Let me just read this. He says, not saying anything after this, please don't try to dox me, but last night after the 0415 count, they took him being Epstein, medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed, but not one. One triage nurse says they spoke to him. Next thing we know, a trip van shows up. We do not do releases on the weekends unless a judge orders it. Next thing we know, he's put in a single man cell and hangs himself. Here's the thing. The trip van did not sign in, and we do not record the plate number, and a guy in a green military dress outfit was in the back of the van, according to the tower guard who let him through the gate. You guys, I'm shaking right now, but I think they switched him out. So in my own language, so he claims Epstein left his cell on Friday evening, shackled in a medical wheelchair. At the same time, an unauthorized trip van arrives at the prison. which he believes then took Epstein away the night before the news broke of his death. The day after Epstein's death, U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman of the Southern District of New York opens up a grand jury proceeding and subpoenas 4chan, Apple, AT&T, Citibank, for records trying to figure out who exactly this guy was that posted this on 4chan.
Wait, they wanted to know that soon?
Mm-hmm.
Immediately, they're like, who said this?
Yeah. How did this get out on a forum? How was this on a forum almost immediately?
Why would they do that? Why would they care if it's just noise?
Good question. But here we can see some of the AT&T phone records. All of this is inside of the Epstein files now. And of course, you can do a search for yourself and look into it. And they forgot to redact Roberto's name. That's the thing. The DOJ just forgot to redact his name. Like they redacted his name in certain documents and then just forgot to do it in others. Here you can see his bank records, check deposits that he's made to USAA, from USAA to his bank, Roberto Giralva. Now so that's one piece of it. And of course, people are saying, well, he wasn't at work that night because his shift, if you actually read the Inspector General's report, he wasn't at work on that time during that timeline, that his shift had already ended. But that he does in this Inspector General's report talk about seeing Epstein being shackled and moved out to go to meet with an attorney at one point. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter. Some are saying, see, he made all this up and posted this on 4chan before we learned about Epstein's death publicly. But he never says, I saw this. If you actually read the 4chan report, we can, if you want to put it back up on the screen, Philip, you can. He doesn't say, I witnessed this with my own eyes.
No, he doesn't.
He's saying that he heard this information, or he's gotten this information. He heard from a triage nurse, and he also heard from a tower guard. So were they all sharing this information in text messages, whatever, or on the phone? He spoke to one of his employees, another person at the corrections facility, and had this conversation. So people are dismissing this. He wasn't there that night. His shift had already ended. Okay.
But it is verified that Epstein did go to the doctor the day before he died. He did go to the medical unit in the prison.
Right.
So that is true. But would he do it after the 4:15? He says the check-in, right?
Yeah.
In the afternoon. I don't know if we know what time.
But again, it's just important to understand, this was posted ahead of time and part of a massive subpoena to try to get to the bottom of who was this. Mm-hmm. This is like Leaker that put this information on the internet and the world didn't even know about it yet. And I remember that morning when this all happened, there were already reports about these 4chan posts. It had already been made public. I don't know if you guys recall that or not, but right after it was announced publicly, they were like, wait a minute, this was already on 4chan. How did this get on 4chan? Anyway, that's one big piece of it. The other piece, of course, is the corpse. And perhaps the most damning of all is how do you make a tattoo suddenly disappear? Here's Jeffrey Epstein, front page of a People magazine article, shirtless with his left arm tattoo there. Very difficult to get rid of a tattoo under duress very quickly. And here is the corpse photo of Jeffrey Epstein, allegedly's left arm, no tattoo. If you know anything about tattoos, and if you know anything about John Wilkes Booth and David Harold, of course, on the run for many days after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, hiding in the pine forests in Virginia and Maryland. And David Harold had a tattoo that he was trying to rub off, and he spent days trying to rub it off, and he couldn't. He did it. He went to great lengths to try to rub it off, and he couldn't do it. And but he did manage to smear it a little bit. But something tells me you're not going to be able to get that tattoo off. It's a pretty dark, deep tattoo on his left shoulder there. So probably not going to come off pretty quickly. At least if they kill this corpse and let's try to sand this thing off here, it's not going to happen. Then, of course, the ears, nose similarities and dissimilarities here. Here's the corpse there on the left. And you can see the nose of this corpse is curved. The ears totally different than Epstein alive. Here's a closer look at his nose. You can see the corpse nose is curved. Epstein's is perfectly straight.
Maybe that's gravity.
Right. I guess because he was laying down dead, his nose just curved.
Does my nose change if I do this?
Yeah. Oh my God, it's curved now. That's exactly what happens.
I don't think that's how cartilage works.
Then, of course, a photo just a few days after, about 2 weeks after, from the little island from Little St. James with an anonymous drone that was flying overhead, which snapped this photo, which sort of set the world on fire. Like, who is this guy that looks almost exactly like Epstein 2 weeks after he's apparently dead? Just kind of kicking it there on this island. All of this to say, I never thought we would see a confirmation, though, in these documents specifically from the Southern District of New York and that massive subpoena for this individual who was there verifiably, this 4chan post, now we know for sure, from inside the correctional facility. Verifiably. Let us know what you think about that. We have got a lot more to talk about. Mel K is going to be joining us here in moments to talk about the Rothschilds banking cabal piece of all of this. And I Represent the Rothschilds is another document that was just released in the Epstein tranche. How deep is this cabal and what exact opportunity, according to the newly released Epstein documents? Here is that email to Peter Thiel of Palantir. He says, certainly not in Saudi. Just think I will avoid the Middle East for the next decade or so. Should be back on the East Coast in late April or May, sometime in New York City on an island, on the island then. As you probably know, he says, I represent the Rothschilds. I was hoping to figure out a way for the bank that has 160 billion in it. Management can do something in tech, best clients in the world, prehistoric products, et cetera, et cetera. So he really laying it on thick for Peter Thiel. Most of us understand the Rothschilds represent a secret underground group of puppet masters bending international finance to their benefit for hundreds of years. But what are they really, and what is Epstein's connection here? Mel K from the Mel K Show joins us right now. She's been tracking all of this, and she's been tracking this for years. And you must feel a little vindicated, Mel, seeing this in print inside of these documents.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I hope that the American people are having their eyes open to the idea that a supranational international banking cartel has been running our country and, frankly, the world since World War II, and that the American taxpayer have essentially been paying for all of this. And what I see when I see all of these documents is, again, a very small club. It seems to be generational wealth that is passed on. Most of the people involved have been involved since the Federal Reserve. And as far as what has come out about the Rothschilds, we knew that because he had Ariana Rothschild was obviously close with him. But him bragging about it should also sound off the alarms, because what I really think we need to do is to start asking questions about the international banking system, particularly the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, the World Bank, and the groups that are at the very top. Because right now, still, as far as I can see, all of these institutions still have immunity from the International Immunities Act of 1945 that created immunity, the inability to look into, audit, or anything legal with the Bank of International Settlements, and 63 banks underneath that. That is still in place to this day, and I believe that that is where the answer to the Rothschild banking dynasty lies. And until we start to fight back against this unjust immunity and the inability to audit or legally look at anything having to do with any of these tentacles that have been around forever, particularly the City of London manipulating the markets for decades, we won't be able to get anywhere. So for me, I just hope that people are thinking, well, why are the Rothschilds' names nowhere, yet they're everywhere? And how come he's saying they have 160 billion? Which bank is that? And again, there's many of these banks, but I do believe all the roads here lead to the Bank of International Settlements. Also very interesting was that he, in those documents, Ariana, I think Rothschild, is saying that they funded Hitler. And then you know, of course, Epstein's like, yeah, so did we, you know, and this goes back to what it's all about is like, okay, infiltration instead of invasion. What are we talking about here? Has all of this been a fraud? These endless wars for profit? Is it really true? And frankly, I think it is.
Yeah, no, you hit on the real. I think the real crux of it, we were speaking with David Icke, you know, I was speaking with him a few weeks ago, but he was saying, like, you know, all of this is connected, right?
Oh, the news is not going to talk about in the Epstein emails. Epstein say his family funded Hitler, the Epsteins, and the Rothschilds. The Rothschild lady releases said, "Hey, it's true. What can the fucking world do about it?" And the news media do not want to speak on that, but they're dead anyway. The small hats is laughing and flexing their muscle. Yeah, they funded Hitler. What y'all gonna do about it?
Right. This idea that like Epstein would have been real
a one-off.
I can't handle. Oh, you funded Hitler. I can't work with you. And he'd be like, yeah, we did too. We're all a part of it. We're all a part of this chaos, which is what he was referencing in Ukraine, right? This idea that like we want Ukraine to collapse because there'll be so many opportunities.
They definitely not gonna talk about that, but that's not gonna go away. Enough people gonna keep bringing that up. That Epstein said it's a lot of money in it for the small hats to overthrow the Ukrainian government. That's what they did. They put the small hat Zelensky in power. Epstein said that. He said it's a lot of money if we can overthrow Gaddafi. They did, stole Gaddafi money. Come on, this is Epstein telling the U.S. government this is a fact. He said we should overthrow the Syrian government. That would be good for Israel. That's exactly what the fuck they did.
He's there for us, right, Peter Thiel?
Right. And then he said later, if you saw the when he was talking to Steve Bannon, he basically said
some underage teenage girls that was violated. That's just a salacious Hollywood stuff. This is way bigger. What the small hats have been doing and perpetrating and manipulating the U.S. government with ease. Epstein was one of the main ones doing it. He wasn't just hanging with them to talk about no girls. Hell no, Bill Clinton, get your bitch ass in here and you go steal all that Haitian resources for us. Trump, get your bitch ass in here and go do this. Man, they ain't just about no goddamn underage girls. It's way more going on.
we just manipulate finance and make it look confusing and make it look like the layman can't understand it. But really, it's very simple. I mean, the level of elitism, first of all, he didn't come from that world. That is not true. He didn't grow up rich. I don't know how. I think he got pulled in by Ace Greenberg. But going back to all of this, the one thing that we have to understand is that I don't believe after the Dulles brothers.
It's not true that he didn't grow up rich. That's a lie. He just told you his people, the Epstein's funded Hitler. Now they keep telling y'all, where did he get all this money from? So they tell us, oh, he was extorting people. Oh, the small hats gave him some money. Fuck no. This man got access to accounts that have nothing to do with none of those people. His family is one of the ones. That's just a fact that people gonna have to understand. He had more money, and now one of our people keep coming to Epstein for everything. It wasn't just for the underage girl. That's nonsense. They ain't that freaking. They're like Bill Clinton. I mean, Bill Gates and all that. They can do that stuff anywhere else in the world. It was more going on. These particular people had their hands in on everything, especially the finances of the goddamn world.
Brothers after World War II. I believe that John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles took the State Department, USAID, the CIA, and all of it and created a tentacle of the supranational global public-private partnership / international banking cartel. So for me, I really think that all of this leads back to post-World War II manipulation, like I said, the immunity that they all gave themselves. Also, the UN is now going broke. That'll be a real stress test for this international, supranational control grid that has been going on. And I really believe also in there you have a lot of stuff about the pandemic. I mean, how is that too? So he's working with JP Morgan. I knew this years ago that in probably 2013, they were pushing the idea of pandemic bonds. And we were like, what is that about? But now it turns out that he was talking about that with JP Morgan. Then you see the JP Morgan banker and Jess Staley, goes to Barclays. He gets to continue working in that field. It just really seems to me, well, I don't believe that. First of all, the CIA and MI6 are different. I think that they're both tentacles of the same thing. So like deciding who he works for, probably the Mossad's under them as well. Again, I just think that there's a supranational structure that was built out of World War II that is still functioning to this day, even though it's on its last leg. And that's who these people's allegiance and alliance is to think that it's to the US or Russia or.
And I'll let he work. That's another smokescreen. They work for him. And it's going to be hard for people to wrap their mind around that. No, the CIA worked for him. Mossad worked for Epstein. That's just a fact. Those Israeli prime ministers worked for him. The presidents worked for him. He didn't work for anybody. Everybody worked for him. That's just, since he was young. He came in, they keep trying to make this story up. How did he get into the finances? Oh, this guy put him in power. That's all nonsense. They all work for him. And I think the man family has some ties to some real demonic forces that's darker than but it got a lot to do with those sacrifices that they're doing with those kids. This world is about darkness, like the good book say. Hey, his family been tapped into it, but he didn't work for none of these people. That's all smokescreen. They all worked for him. Even everybody in Israel, he didn't work for none of them damn people. That's not true no more.
Or Israel or China doesn't compute to this level of people that are running this international banking cartel.
Right. It seems to me that they can look and see which country can manipulate which country. It doesn't really matter. I mean, we can tell these stories about race and land and all of that stuff, but really to these dark forces, it doesn't matter.
I'm just saying he worked for Mossad when Abu Barak is in his house kissing his ass, being compromised, begging for girls, saying, Jeffrey, teach me how to handle women. How are you saying he worked for Mossad when these motherfuckers is kissing his ass, asking him for advice on all kind of motherfucking nonsense? People have to wrap their mind around it and understand what's going on here. Some real demonic shit. He the prince of the darkness type shit. But he absolutely did not work for none of them people.
If Ghana were the one that they thought they could, manipulate from, they would do it. Did you notice? Because, I think we hear these words and we're like, oh, Rothschilds, it's probably evil, right? I also noticed a Vanderbilt heir in there. I don't know if you noticed, allegedly, Matthew Mellon is a descendant of the Vanderbilt, and there was a list that somebody had said they had a video of him.
That's the only people that he wasn't bigger than, and that's the Rothschilds. But okay, Epstein is telling y'all his family is on their level. He had that type of access and pull, and it's all playing out in everybody's in front of their face. He on that Rothschild goddamn level. That's just a fact. And he proved it when he said, hey, we helped fund Hitler too. My family did. And the Rothschild lady said we did too. He proven that they on their level.
Having relations with somebody on Zorro Ranch. So, how far back does this go? Does it surprise you to see a Vanderbilt and Rothschilds and these names? It's like the Great Gatsby era.
It is. And no, it doesn't. And again, all roads, I would say, lead back to the families that usurped our nation under Wilson with the Federal Reserve and have kept this power all the time. Because when you look into, I'm finishing up a book, when you look into it, after World War II, Germany wasn't supposed to be refunded and rebuilt and their military rebuilt. But if you look at who helped rebuild it, you'll see that it's the Rockefellers and Standard Oil all involved there. Both of the Dulles brothers are lawyers from Wall Street. They're there. It just to me, what this is again, it goes back to even the stories about the Titanic. This is generational wealth that rewards generational wealth. And as they have gotten older and older, currently a couple of people, I think Nathaniel Rothschild was in there too. This is why people say, oh, well, Trump knew them. Yeah, these people only are around each other and they get invited to be members of the Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and the Rockefeller Institute. And they all go to the same events and they go to the same galas and they go to the same things. And I think the one thing, the people that I think were most involved with Epstein, which of course are the Clintons, they too are very involved, I think, in the international trafficking business that he was involved in. Because I don't think it was just children and humans. I think he also, all these people are involved in an international trafficking ring that includes drugs and weapons. And if you really look into the relationship between Epstein and the Clintons and when it started, they clearly knew each other back in the Mena, Arkansas, Sandinista days when Bill Clinton was allowing bro,
it's just so crazy that Bill Clinton has always been a dirty, no good politician, and the Clinton body count, him and that lady, is outrageous, and the Democrats always tried to hide it. But since they wanted to attack Trump, it's all gonna come out now. They can't launder his it can't launder his reputation, but they don't care. He's a dying old man. But they go, they all been dirty. He just one of the dirtiest ones, one of the slickest ones. He was always corrupted. And Epstein them always had their hands on him. That Monica Lewinsky shit just was some shit to dangle in front of the U.S. pop. They always had him because he was always a pervert and things of that nature. But Bill Clinton was a global gangster. A lot of BS he was doing, that was Epstein right beside him. And after plenty, see, once they got you, they always got you. He wasn't hanging with Epstein. Now it's bigger than massages. He didn't hang with no Epstein for no fucking massage. The president of the goddamn United States of America. You think he need to hang with that pervert? You think Bill Clinton to hang with Epstein to have access to some underage girls? Hell no. But to have access to the whole cabala of what they was doing. That's what Clinton, he needed to further his goddamn wealth, because he was broke. He wasn't no billionaire. He didn't have that type of money, and he wanted to have that type of money. That's why they decided to rip off Haiti for billions of dollars. Now we know Jeffrey Epstein was the one running the play the whole time. They just rubber stamping Bill Clinton on all kind of nefarious shit all over the motherfucking world.
What was his name? But Barry Seal to run Air America and drop guns and weapons in Nicaragua.
Right.
Well, that was Bill Clinton was the governor. Well, you know what? Jeffrey Epstein was down there.
We always thought Hillary Clinton, attack Libya. She wanted to attack Libya. Whole time Epstein told them to attack Libya so he could steal the billions of the sovereign Libya wealth. This shit is crazy, bro. They didn't have a thought themselves the whole time. You got Epstein behind that. This is real, bro. Obama, and we can't play. See, people say, well, Obama not tied to Epstein. The bitch is tied to that Pizzagate shit. He definitely tied to that. Because that white guy we was talking about earlier, Podesta, that was his right-hand man. That was Obama's right-hand man. And that's why a lot of Obama's emails, they already proved that, the right proved that, it's filled with pizza. They want all kind of pizza. They love pizza. They want pizza parties. Come on, bro. That's what Obama caught up in. Guess who behind that? Epstein, them too.
There with Les Wexner buying Air America, and apparently Bill Barr was involved. And you see in the emails, Bill Barr, CIA, and again, all these little pieces. Again, also Hillary Clinton, she started the expansion to the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children with Tony Blair's wife and Richard Branson's, I believe, mother. And from the year that they started that, the international trafficking was estimated to be about $40 billion. 5 years after they started the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, it's valued at $150 billion. And then you look at the pathway by Epstein Island. Well, the Clintons had the Clinton Global Initiative, which Epstein says that he started, which was something you bought into. Okay, you got invited, but you bought into. Well, who else was in that? The Bronfman sisters of Nexium. So, and then you look at the Clinton Island Initiative. This is another thing a lot of people don't talk about. That's also with Branson, where the Clintons went in with the Clinton Global Initiative, and they did this thing where they went to first 10 islands, and then it ended up being 26 islands all along.
The small hats just rubber stamped this man. I never knew that. They just rubber stamped Bill Clinton. After he left office, they just rubber stamped his name on shit, and they start kidnapping, plundering all over the world. Clinton Global Initiative. Yes, Clinton's Global Initiative was started by Jeffrey Epstein. That's a fact.
Along that path that is obviously the biggest human trafficking maritime pathway probably in the world, and they put in solar panels and internet, and they had people come in from Digicel and from Crisis International. They're friends that are donors to the Clinton Foundation or the Clinton Global Initiative. So again, I really do think that the Clintons have put a spotlight on themselves, but a lot of this is going to lead to Bill and Hillary Clinton and their 76 NGOs and shell companies that Jeffrey Epstein, I believe, was totally involved in. And it's a worldwide trafficking ring. And if you look at all of the interventions of the Clintons through today, from when she was at Yale, how involved she was in everything having to do with children and abortion and pregnancy and all of this stuff. It's very disturbing. And I just saw last week they're talking about art in embassies. Came out and they said, why are we funding this art in embassies, which again was started by Hillary Clinton? It's about shipping art, live art around the world. There's just a lot there, and it goes very deep. But I do hope that the Clintons finally have a spotlight on them, because I think that they were as involved in this as Jeffrey Epstein, if not more.
Oh, for sure. When he says, I represent the Rothschilds, and he tells Peter Thiel this, what does that mean? I represent. What do you think that means?
Well, I think that it means that he can go out and solicit deals and all of that for them. I don't think it's something other than that. I also believe that he was very close, I think, with Linda Rothschild as well. And again, she started that Center for Inclusive Capitalism with the Vatican and all this stuff. So to me, again, he is, I guess, going to Peter Thiel, trying to I think, impress him that he represents them, but he's not alone. And his contract with them looks like it's $20 million. And he said the bank is $160 billion. I would venture to say that they're worth many trillions of dollars, which is why I say we have to unhinge the International Organization Immunity Act and find out the real origins of the Bank of International Settlements and its international banking system, because I really think all roads lead to there. And I think that's the real tip of the spear.
And I guess, yeah, and that could be why, I mean, we haven't seen the release of this. It's not just Mossad or CIA or MI6. It's not just Netanyahu or any of these other demons, right? It's much bigger. It's much bigger. And when, as Catherine Austin Fitz has talked about, like that overarching International Bank of Settlements that controls everything, has this immunity that you talk about, they're the ones that can just pick up a phone and just say, this stuff does not come out. You do not release these things. Like, or everything will dry up. Like, all of the money dries up, and they are very scared of this money. Do you think that that's the case?
Yes, 1,000%. And as we watch the money dry up in the UN tentacles, which is a giant money laundering operation as well, we are going to see that. I honestly believe that is what is being dismantled. Again, the American people have been so lied to and manipulated and betrayed since World War II when it comes to the selling out of our nation, the hollowing out of our manufacturing, of our industry. But I frankly believe that we have paid for not just the entire Cold War with our taxpayer dollars, but the entire war on terror that was turned on us. But I think the U.S. taxpayers have paid for the entire globalist experiment since World War II as well. And like you said, these banks, the World Bank, the IMF, and the Bank of International Settlements, and the 63 partner banks that all have international immunity, why do they have that? And what are they hiding? And why would they need that? And how come it's gone on so long? Because what I will say is that we were told that Switzerland was neutral during World War II, but that's not true. Switzerland was running the money for the entire world out of Germany and around the rest of the world. And if you ask me, what we're going to find out is that all of our nations have been looted and lied to and manipulated, and that they are sitting on probably quadrillions of dollars. And our 21 trillion that Catherine says is missing is nothing to them. But until we say enough's enough and end these international pacts that have been protecting these people, it's going to be a slow chiseling away. But one big move could really make it all fall apart. I frankly think the UN won't survive much longer. And I think that that's a great thing. But beyond that, we have to understand that all of the NGOs, the millions of NGOs out there, are all recipients and participants in this as well. This supranational predatory financial organism, I think, includes the military industrial complex, particularly NATO. And they have to keep justifying funding NATO, funding the military industrial complex. So endless wars for profit has been their model since World War I. And I frankly believe if it wasn't for Donald Trump winning in 2016 and everything since, we would have already seen World War III, which I think was planned at the end of World War II. And we would have already had, chaos everywhere in the world. And then they would push us into Agenda 2030 as the solution, because after World War I, it was the same thing: consolidate the power, the money, and everything. Refund Germany, use Germany again after after World War II, the United States was suckered into the Marshall Plan that we just basically ended in 2025, which was us paying for the entire reconstruction of Europe, the entire euro, all of this stuff. So for me, I think we dodged a bullet because I think World War III was already on the books long ago, and we bypassed it. But I still believe that they are the most desperate right now, and it also makes them the most dangerous right now. So we have to keep attention on that. Especially, but I think their whole model, supranational model, is falling apart, and they're desperately trying to keep it together.
Her book is Americans Anonymous.
Philip has a question.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Philip. Philip, he said he has a question.
Oh, well, all right. Well, he'll
Go, follow me.